Book Second, Chapter 11 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book Second, Chapter 11 Poor Acting. The last week that I proposed to spend at the farmhouse was passing quietly and uneventfully away. I was gaining steadily, though not rapidly, in physical strength, but not in my power to endure my disappointment with equanimity, much less resignation. In the delirium of my fever, I kept constantly repeating the words, "So Mrs. Yocombe told me. It's all wrong." Each successive day found these words on my lips again with increasing frequency. It seemed contrary to both right and reason that one should so completely enslave me and then go away, leaving me a bound and helpless captive. The conviction grew stronger that no such power over me should have been given to her if her influence was to end only in darkening my life and crippling my power to be a forceful man among men. I felt with instinctive certainty that my burden would be too heavy to leave me the elastic spring and energy required by my exacting profession. A hopeful, eager interest in life and the world at large was the first necessity to success in my calling. But already I found a leaden apathy creeping over me, which even the powerful motives of pride and my resolute purpose to seem cheerful that she might go on to her bright future unregretfully were not sufficiently strong to banish. If I could not cope with this despondency in its inception, how could I face the future? At first I had bitterly condemned my weakness, but now I began to recognize the strength of my love, which, so far from being a mere sudden passion, was the deep, abiding conviction that I had met the only woman I could marry, the woman whom my soul claimed as its mate, because she possessed the power to help me and to inspire me to tireless effort toward better living and nobler achievement. Her absolute truth would keep me true and anchored amid the swift, dark currents of the world to which I was exposed. I feared with almost instinctive certainty that I would become either a brooding, solitary man or else a very ambitious and reckless one, for I was conscious of no reserve strength which would enable me to go steadfastly on my way under the calm and inexorable guidance of duty. Such was my faith in her that I had no hope whatever. If she loved and had given her troth to another man, it would not be in her nature to change. Therefore, my purpose had simplified itself to the effort to get through this one week at the farmhouse in a manner that would enable me to carry away the respect of all its inmates, but especially the esteem of one to whom I feared I seemed a rash, ill-balanced man. So carefully had I avoided Miss Warren's society, and yet so freely and frankly apparently had I spoken to her in the presence of her affianced, that his suspicions were evidently banished, and he treated me with a gracious and patronizing benignity. He saw no reason why he should not turn on me the light of his full and smiling countenance, which might have been taken as an emblem of prosperity, and in truth I gave him no reason. So rigid was the constraint under which I kept myself that jealousy itself could not have found fault. With the exception of the 2 momentary interviews recorded in the previous chapter, we had not spoken a syllable together except in his presence, nor had I permitted my eyes to follow her with a wistful glance that he or she could intercept. Even Mrs. Yocombe appeared to think that I was recovering in more senses than one, and by frequent romps with the children, jests and chaffing with Mr. Yocombe and Reuben, by a little frank and ostentatious gallantry to Ada, which no longer deceived even her simple mind, since I never sought her exclusive society as a lover would have done, I confirmed the impression. And yet, in spite of all efforts and disguises, the truth will often flash out unexpectedly and irresistibly, making known all that we hoped to hide with the distinctness of the lightning, which revealed even the color of the roses on the night of the storm. The weather had become exceedingly warm, and Miss Warren's somewhat portly suitor clung persistently to the wide, cool veranda. Ada sat there frequently also. Sometimes she read to the children fairy stories, of which Adela, Mr. Hearn's little girl, had brought a great store, and she seemed to enjoy them quite as much as her eager-eyed listeners. But more often she superintended their doll dressmaking, over which there were the most animated discussions. The banker would look on them with the utmost content while he slowly waved his palm leaf fan. Indeed, the group was pretty enough to justify all the pleasure he manifested. The rustic piazza formed just the setting for Ada's beauty, and her light summer costume well suggested her perfect and womanly form, while the companionship of the children proved that she was almost as guileless and childlike as they. The group was like a bubbling, sparkling spring at which the rather advanced man of the world sipped with increasing pleasure. Miss Warren also gave much of her time to the children and beguiled them into many simple lessons at the piano. Zillah was true to her first love, but Adela gave to Ada a decided preference. And when they entered on the intense excitement of making a new wardrobe for each of the large dolls that Mr. Hearn had brought, Ada had the advantage, for she was a genius in such matters and quite as much interested as the little girls themselves. In my desperate struggle with myself, I tried not even to see Miss Warren, for every glance appeared to rivet my chains, and yet I gained the impression that she was a little restless and distrait. She seemed much at her piano, not so much for Mr. Hearn's sake as her own, and sometimes I was so impressed by the strong, passionate music that she evoked that I was compelled to hasten beyond its reach. It meant too much to me. Oh, the strange idolatry of an absorbing affection! All that she said or did had for me an indescribable charm that both tortured and delighted. Still, every hour increased my conviction that my only safety was in flight. My faithful ally Reuben still took me on long morning drives, and in the afternoon, with my mail and paper, I sought secluded nooks in a somewhat distant grove, which I reached by the shady lane, of which I had caught a glimpse with Miss Warren on the first evening of my arrival. But Friday afternoon was too hot for the walk thither. The banker had wilted and retired to his room. Ada and the children were out under a tree. The girl looked up wistfully and invitingly as I came out. "I wish I were an artist, Miss Ada," I cried. "You three make a lovely picture." Remembering an arbor at the further end of the garden, I turned my steps thither, passing rapidly by the spot where I had seen my Eve, who was not mine. I had entered the arbor before I saw it was occupied, and was surprised by the vivid blush with which Miss Warren greeted me. "Pardon me," I said. "I did not know you were here." And I was about to depart with the best attempt at a smile that I could muster. She sprang up and asked, a little indignantly, "Am I infected with a pestilence that you so avoid me, Mr. Morton?" "Oh, no," I replied with a short, grim laugh. "If it were only a pestilence, I fear I disturbed your nap. But you know I'm a born blunderer." "You said we should be friends," she began hesitatingly. "Do you doubt it?" I asked gravely. "Do you doubt that I would hesitate at any sacrifice?" "I don't want sacrifices. I wish to see you happy and your manner natural." "I'm sure I've been cheerful during the past week." "No, you have only seemed cheerful. And often I've seen you look as grim, hard, and stern as if you were on the eve of mortal combat." "You observe closely, Miss Warren." "Why should I not observe closely? Do you think me inhuman? Can I forget what I owe you and that you nearly died?" "Well," I said dejectedly, "what can I do? It seems that I have played the hypocrite all the week in vain. I will do whatever you ask." "I was in hopes that as you grew well and strong you would throw off this folly. Have you not enough manhood to overcome it?" "No, Miss Warren," I said bluntly, "I have not. What little manhood I had led to this very thing. Such enthrallment, you may call it." "No, I will not. It's a degrading word. I would not have a slave if I could." "Since I can't help it, I don't see how you can. I may have been a poor actor, but I know I've not been obtrusive." "You have not indeed," she replied a little bitterly. "But you have no cause for such feelings. They seem to me unnatural and the result of a morbid mind." "Yes, you have thought me very ill balanced from the first, but I'm constrained to use such poor wits as I possess. In the abstract, it strikes me as not irrational to recognize embodied truth and loveliness. And I do not think the less of myself because I reached such recognition in hours rather than in months." I saw your very self in this old garden, and every subsequent day has confirmed that impression. But there's no use in wasting words in explanation. I don't try to explain it to myself, but the fact is clear enough. By some necessity of my nature, it is just as it is. I can no more help it than I can help breathing. It was inevitable. My only chance was never meeting you, and yet I can scarcely wish that even now. Perhaps you think I've not tried, since I learned I ought to banish your image. But I have struggled as if I were engaged in a mortal combat, as you suggested. But it's of no use. I can't deceive you any more than I can myself. Now you know the whole truth, and it seems that there is no escaping it in our experience. I do not expect anything. I ask nothing save that you accept the happiness which is your perfect right, for not a shadow of blame rests on you. If you were not happy, I should be only tenfold more wretched, but I've no right to speak to you in this way. I see I've caused you much pain. I've no right even to look at you feeling as I do. I would have gone before were it not for hurting Mrs. Yocombe's feelings. I shall return to New York next Monday for— Return to New York, she repeated with a sudden and deep breath, and she became very pale. After a second, she added hastily, You are not strong enough yet. We are the ones to go. Miss Warren, I said almost sternly, it's little that I ask of you or that you can give. I may not have deceived you, but I have the others. Mrs. Yocombe knows, but she is as merciful as my own mother would have been. I'm not ashamed of my love. I'm proud of it, but it's too sacred a thing. And, well, if you can't understand me, I can't explain. All I ask is that you seem indifferent to my course beyond ordinary friendliness. There, God bless you for your patient kindness. I will not trespass on it longer. You have the best and kindest heart of any woman in the world. Why don't you exult a little over your conquest? It's complete enough to satisfy the most insatiable coquette. Don't look so sad. I'll be your merry-hearted friend yet before I'm 80. But my faint attempt at lightness was a speedy failure, for my strong passion broke out irresistibly. Oh God, I exclaimed, how beautiful you are to me! When shall I forget the look in your kind, true eyes? But I'm disgracing myself again. I've no right to speak to you. I wish I could never see you again till my heart had become stone and my will like steel. And I turned and walked swiftly away until, from sheer exhaustion, I threw myself under a tree and buried my face in my hands. For I hated the warm sunny light when my life was so cheerless and dark. I lay almost as if I were dead for hours, and the evening was growing dusky when I arose and wearily returned to the farmhouse. They were all on the veranda except Miss Warren, who was at her piano again. Mrs. Yocombe met me with much solicitude. Reuben was just starting out to look for thee, she said. I took a longer ramble than I intended, I replied with a laugh. I think I lost myself a little. I don't deserve any supper and only want a cup of tea. Miss Warren played very softly for a moment, and I knew she was listening to my lame excuses. It doesn't matter what thee wants. I know what thee needs. Thee isn't out of my hands altogether yet. Come right into the dining room. I should think you would be slow to revolt against such a benign government, remarked Mr. Hearn most graciously, and the thought occurred to me that he was not displeased to have me out of the way so long. Yes, indeed, chimed in Mr. Yocombe. We're always the better for minding mother. They'll find that out, Richard, after thee's been here a few weeks longer. Mr. Yocombe, your loyalty itself. If women ever get their rights, our paper will nominate Mrs. Yocombe for president. I've all the rights I want now, Richard, and I've the right to scold thee for not taking better care of thyself. I'll submit to anything from you. You are wiser than the advanced female agitators, for you know you've all the power now, and that we men are always at your mercy. Well, now that thee talks of mercy, I won't scold thee, but give thee thy supper at once. Thee always knew, Richard, how to get around mother, laughed the genial old man, whose life ever seemed as mellow and ripe as a juicy fall pippin. Ada followed her mother in to assist her, and I saw that Miss Warren had turned toward us. Why, Richard Morton, exclaimed Mrs. Yocombe as I entered the lighted dining room. Thee looks as pale and haggard as a ghost. Thee must have got lost indeed and gone far beyond thy strength. Can I do anything to assist you, Mrs. Yocombe?" asked a timid voice from the doorway. I was glad that Ada was in the kitchen at the moment, for I lost at once my ghostly pallor. "Yes," said Mrs. Yocombe heartily. "Come in and make this man eat, and scold him soundly for going so far away as to get lost when he's scarcely able to walk at all. I've kind of promised I wouldn't scold him, and somebody must." "I'd scold like Xanthippe if I thought it would do any good," she said with a faint smile, but her eyes were full of reproach. For a moment Mrs. Yocombe disappeared behind the door of her china closet, and Miss Warren added in a low, hurried whisper to me, "You promised me to get well. You are not keeping your word." "That cuts worse than anything Xanthippe could have said." "I don't want to cut, but to cure." "Then become the opposite of what you are. That would cure me." "With such a motive, I'm tempted to try," she said with a half reckless laugh, for Ada was entering with some delicate toast. "Miss Ada," I cried, "I owe you a supper at the Brunswick for this, and I'll pay my debt the first chance you'll give me." "If thee talks of paying, I'll not go with thee," she said a little coldly, and she seemingly did not like the presence of Miss Warren nor the telltale color in my cheeks. "That's a deserved rebuke, Miss Ada. I know well enough that I can never repay all your kindness, and so I won't try. But you'll go with me because I want you to, and because I will be proud of your company. I shall be the envy of all the men present." "They'd think me very rustic," she said, smiling. "Quite as much so as a moss rose. But you'll see. I will be besieged the next few days by my acquaintances for an introduction, and my account of you will make them wild. I shall be, however, a very dragon of a big brother, and won't let one of them come near you who is not a saint. That is, as far as I am a judge of the article." "Thee may keep them all away if thee pleases," she replied, blushing and laughing. "I should be afraid of thy fine city friends." "I'm afraid of a good many of them myself," I replied. "But some are genuine, and you shall have a good time, never fear." "I'll leave you to arrange the details of your brilliant campaign," said Miss Warren, smiling. "But thee hasn't scolded Richard," said Mrs. Yocombe, who was seemingly busy about the room. "My words would have no weight. He knows he ought to be ashamed of himself," she answered from the doorway. "I am, heartily," I said, looking into her eyes a moment. "Since he's penitent, Mrs. Yocombe, I don't see as anything more can be done," she replied smilingly. "I don't think much of penitence unless it's followed by reformation," said my sensible hostess. "We'll see how he behaves the next few weeks. Mr. Morton, I hope you will let Mrs. Yocombe see a daily change for the better for a long time to come. She deserves it at your hands." And there was almost entreaty in the young girl's voice. She ought to know better than to ask it, I thought. My only answer was a heavy frown, and I turned abruptly away from her appealing glance. "I think Emily Warren acts very queer," said Ada after the young lady had gone. "She's at her piano half the time, and I know from her eyes that she's been crying this afternoon. If ever a girl was engaged to a good, kind man who would give her everything, she is. I don't see—" "Ada," interrupted her mother, "I hope thee was overcoming that trait. It's not a pleasing one. If people give us their confidence, very well. If not, we should be blind." The girl blushed vividly and looked deprecatingly at me. "You meant nothing ill-natured, Miss Ada," I said gently. "It isn't in you. Come now, and let me tell you and your mother what a good time I'm planning for you in New York." And we soon made the old dining room ring with our laughter. Mr. Yocombe, Reuben, and the children soon joined us, and the lovers were left alone on the shadowy porch. From the gracious manner of Mr. Hearn the following morning, I think he rather thanked me for drawing off the embarrassing third parties. End of Book Second, Chapter 11. Book Second, Chapter 12 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book Second, Chapter 12. The Hope of a Hidden Treasure. The next day I lured Reuben off on a fishing excursion to a mountain lake, and so congratulated myself on escaping ordeals to which I found myself wholly unequal. We did not reach the farmhouse till quite late in the evening, and found that Mr. Hearn and Miss Warren were out enjoying a moonlight ride. As on the previous evening, all the family gathered around Reuben and me as we sat down to our late supper, the little girls arranging with delight the sylvan spoil that I had brought them. They were all so genial and kind that I grieved to think that I had but one more evening with them, and I thought of my cheerless quarters in New York with an inward shiver. Before very long Mr. Hearn entered with Miss Warren, and the banker was in fine spirits. "The moonlit landscapes were divine," he said. "Never have I seen them surpassed, not even in Europe." It was evident that his complacency was not easily disturbed, for I thought that a more sympathetic lover would have noted that his companion was not so enthusiastic as himself. Indeed, Miss Warren seemed to bring in with her the cold, pale moonlight. Her finely chiseled oval face looked white and thin as if she were chilled, and I noticed that she shivered as she entered. "Come," cried Mr. Yocombe in his hearty way. "Emily, thee and Mr. Hearn have had thy fill of moonlight dew and such like unsubstantial stuff. I'm going to give you both a generous slice of cold roast beef. That's what makes good red blood, and Emily, thee looks as if thee needed a little more. Then I want to see if we cannot provoke thee to one of thy old-time laughs. Seems to me we've missed it a little of late. Thy laugh beats all thy music at the piano." "Yes, Emily," said Mr. Hearn a little discontentedly. "I think you are growing rather quiet and distrait of late. When have I heard one of your genuine mirthful laughs?" With a sudden wonder my mind took up his question. When had I heard her laugh, whose contagious joyousness was so infectious that I too had laughed without knowing why? I now remembered that it was before he came. It was the morning when my memory, more kind than my fate, still refused to reveal the disappointment that now was crushing my very soul. It was when all in the farmhouse were so glad at my assured recovery. Reuben had said that she was like a lark that day, that she equaled Dapple in her glad life. I could recall no such day since, though her lover was present and her happiness assured. Even he was beginning to note that the light of his countenance did not illumine her face, that she was quiet and distrait. Manlike, I had to think it all out, but I thought swiftly. The echo of his words had scarcely died away before the light of a great hope flashed into my face as my whole heart put the question, "Can it be only sympathy?" She met my eager glance shrinkingly. I felt almost as if my life depended on the answer that she might consciously or unconsciously give. Why did she fall into painful and even piteous confusion? But her womanly pride and strong character at once asserted themselves, for she arose quietly, saying, "I do not feel well this evening," and she left the room. Mr. Hearn followed precipitately and was profuse in his commiseration. "I shall be well in the morning," she said with such clear, confident emphasis that it occurred to me that the assurance was not meant for his ears only. Then, in spite of his entreaties, she went to her room. I wanted no more supper and made a poor pretense of keeping Reuben company, and I thought his boy's appetite never would be satisfied. My mind was in such a tumult of hope and fear that I had to strive with my whole strength for self-mastery so as to excite no surmises. Mrs. Yocombe gave me a few inquiring glances, thinking perhaps that I was showing more solicitude about Miss Warren than was wise. But in fact they were all so simple-hearted, so accustomed to express all they thought and felt, that they were not inclined to search for hidden and subtle motives. Even feigning more bungling than mine would have kept my secret from them. Ada seemed relieved at Miss Warren's departure. Mr. Hearn lighted a cigar and sat down on the piazza. As soon as possible, I pleaded fatigue and retired to my room, for I was eager to be alone, that I might, unwatched, look with fearful yet glistening eyes on the trace I had discovered of an infinite treasure. I again sat down by the window and looked into the old garden. The possibility that the woman that I had seen there, undisguised in her beautiful truth, might be drawing near me under an impulse too strong to be resisted, thrilled my very soul. It's contrary to reason, to every law in nature, I said, that she should attract me with such tremendous gravitation, and yet my love have no counteraction. And yet, I murmured, beware, beware how you hope. Possibly she is merely indisposed. It is more probable that her feelings toward you are those of gratitude only, and of deep sympathy. She is under the impression that you saved her life, and that she has unwittingly blighted yours. And as Mrs. Yocombe said, she is so kind-hearted, so sensitive, that the thought shadows her life and robs it of zest and happiness. You cannot know that she is learning to return your love in spite of herself, simply because she is pale and somewhat sad. She would think herself, as she said, inhuman if she were happy and serene. I must seek for other tests, and I thought long and deeply. Oh, Will Shakespeare, I at last murmured. You knew the human heart, if anyone ever did. I remember now that you wrote, "A murderous guilt shows not itself more soon than love that would seem hid." Oh, for the eyes of Argus! If all the mines of wealth in the world were uncovered, and I might have them all for looking, I'd turn away for one clear glimpse into her woman's heart tonight. Go to New York on Monday? No, not unless driven away with a whip of scorpions. No eagle that ever circled those skies watched, as I'll stay and watch, for the faintest trace of this priceless secret. No detective, stimulated by professional pride and vast reward, ever sought proof of murderous guilt, as I shall seek for evidences of this pure woman's love, for more than life depends on the result of my quest. Words like these would once have seemed extravagant and absurd, but in the abandon of my solitude and in my strong excitement, they but inadequately expressed the thoughts that surged through my mind. But as I grew calmer, conscience asked to be heard. Just what do you propose, it asked, to win her from another, who now has every right to her allegiance and love? Change places, and how would you regard the man who sought to supplant you? You cannot win happiness at the expense of your honor. Then reason added with quiet emphasis, even though your conscience is not equal to the emergency, hers will be. She will do what seems right without any regard for the consequences. If you sought to woo her now, she would despise you. She would regard it as an insult that she would never forgive. It would appear proof complete that you doubted her truth, her chief characteristic. Between them they made so strong a case against me that my heart sank at the prospect. But hope is the lever that moves the world onward, and the faint hope that had dawned on my thick night was too dear and bright a one to leave me crushed again by my old despondency. And I felt that there must be some way of untangling the problem. If the wall of honor hedged me in on every side, I would know the fact to be true before I accepted it. I do not propose to woo her, I argued, and possibly my good resolution was strengthened by the knowledge that such a course would be fatal to my hope. I only intend to discover what may possibly exist. I never have intentionally sought to influence her, even by a glance, since I knew of her relation to Mr. Hearn. I'm under no obligation to this prosperous banker. I'm only bound by honor in the abstract. They are not married. Mrs. Yocombe would say that I had been brought hither by an overruling providence. It certainly was not a conscious choice of mine, and since I met this woman, everything has conspired to bring me to my present position. I know I'm not to blame for it, no more than I was for the storm or the lightning bolt. What a clod I should be were I indifferent to the traits that she has manifested. I feel with absolute certainty that I cannot help the impression that she has made on me. If I could have foreseen it all, I might have remained away, but I was led hither and kept here by my illness till my chains are riveted and locked, and the key is lost. I cannot escape the fact that I belong to her, body and soul. Now, suppose for the sake of argument that gratitude, respect, friendliness, and a sense of being unprotected and alone in the world have led to her engagement with the wealthy, middle-aged banker, and that through it all her woman's heart was never awakened. Such a thing at least is possible. If this were true, she would be no more to blame than I, and we might become the happy victims of circumstances. I'm not worthy of her, and never shall be, but I can't help that either. After all, it seems to me that that which should fulfill my hope is not a ledger balance of good qualities, but the magnetic sympathy of two natures that supplement each other and were designed for each other in heaven's matchmaking. Even now, my best hope is based on the truth that she attracts me so irresistibly, and though a much smaller body morally, I should have some corresponding attraction for her. If her woman's heart has become mine, what can she give him? Her very truth may become my most powerful ally. If she still loves him, I will go away and stay away. If it be in accordance with my trembling hope, I have the higher right, and I will assert it to the utmost extent of my power. Shall the happiness of two lives be sacrificed to his unflagging prosperity? Could it ever be right for him to lead her body to the altar and leave her heart with me? Could she, who is truth itself, go there and perjure herself before God and man? No, 1,000 times no. It has become a simple question of whom she loves. And I'll find out if Shakespeare's words are true. If she has love for me, let her bury it never so deeply. My love will be the divining rod that will inevitably discover it. Having reached this conclusion, I at last slept in the small hours of the night. I thought I detected something like apprehension in her eyes when I met her in the morning. Was she conscious of a secret that might reveal itself in spite of her? But she was cheerful and decided in her manner, and seemed bent on assuring Mr. Hearn that she was well again, and all that he could desire. Were I in mortal peril, I could not have been more vigilantly on my guard. Not for the world would I permit her to know what was passing in my mind, at least not yet. And as far as possible, I resumed my old manner. I even simulated more dejection than I felt, to counterbalance the flash of hope that I feared she had recognized on the previous evening. I well knew that all her woman's strength, that all her woman's pride and exalted sense of honor would bind her to him, who was serenely secure in his trust. My one hope was that her woman's heart was my ally, that it would so assert itself that truth and honor would at last range themselves on its side. Little did the simple, frank old Quaker realize the passionate alternations of hope and fear that I brought to his breakfast table that bright Sunday. All that my guarded scrutiny could gather was that Miss Warren was a little too devoted and thoughtful to her urbane lover, and that her cheerfulness lacked somewhat in spontaneity. It was agreed at the breakfast table that we should all go to meeting. "Mrs. Yocombe," I said, finding her alone for a moment, "won't you be moved this morning? I need one of your sermons more than any heathen in Africa. Whatever your faith is, I believe in it, for I've seen its fruits. If a message is given to me, I will not be silent. If not, it would be presumptuous to speak. But my prayer is that the Spirit whom we worship may speak to thee, and that thou wilt listen. Unless he speaks, my poor words will be of no avail. You are a mystery to me, Mrs. Yocombe, with your genial, homely farm life here and your mystical spiritual heights at the meeting house. You seem to go from the kitchen by easy and natural transition to the regions beyond the stars, and to pass without hesitancy from the companionship of us poor mortals into a presence that is to me supremely awful. He doesn't understand, Richard. The little faith I have I take with me to the kitchen, and I'm not afraid of my Father in heaven because he is so great and I'm so little. Is Zillah afraid of her father? I suppose you are right, and I admit that I don't understand, and I don't see how I could reason it out. God's children, she replied, as all children, come to believe many blessed truths without the aid of reason. It was not reason that taught me my mother's love, and yet, now that I have children, it seems very reasonable. I think I learned most from what she said to me and did for me. If ever children were assured of love by their Heavenly Father, we have been. If it is possible for a human soul to be touched by a loving, unselfish devotion, let him read the story of Christ. But, Mrs. Yocombe, I'm not one of the children. Yes, thee is. The trouble with thee is that thee's ashamed, or at least that thee won't acknowledge the relation and be true to it. Dear Mrs. Yocombe, I cried in dismay, I must either renounce heathenism or go away from your influence, and I left precipitately. But in truth, I was too far gone in human idolatry to think long upon her words. They lodged in my memory, however, and I trust will never lose their influence. End of Book Second, Chapter 12. Book Second, Chapter 13 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book Second, Chapter 13. The Old Meeting House Again. Reuben and I, with Dapple, skimmed along the country roads, and my hopes and spirits kindled, though I scarcely knew why. We were early at the meeting house, and to my joy I gained my old seat, in which I had woven my June daydream around the fair unknown Quakeress, whose face was now that of a loved sister. What ages seemingly had elapsed since that fateful day! What infinite advances in life's experiences I had made since I last sat there! How near I had come to the experiences of another life! The fact made me grave and thoughtful. And yet, if my fear and not my hope were realized, what a burden was imposed upon me with the life that disease had spared! Had I even Mrs. Yoakum's faith, I knew it would be a weight under which I would often stagger and faint. Before very long, the great family rockaway unloaded its precious freight at the horse block, and Ada and Miss Warren entered, followed by the little girls. In secret wonder, I saw Ada pause before the same long, straight-backed bench or pew, and Miss Warren take the place where I had first seen my embodiment of June. Mrs. Yoakum went quietly to her place on the high seat. The spell continues to work, but with an important change, I thought. In a few moments, Mr. Yoakum marshaled in Mr. Hearn and placed him in the end of the pew next to Miss Warren on the men's side, so that they might have the satisfaction of sitting together as if at church. He then looked around for me, but I shook my head and would not go up higher. Soon all the simple, plainly apparelled folk who would attend that day were in their places, and the old deep hush that I so well remembered settled down upon us. The sweet, low monotone of the summer wind was playing still among the maples. I do believe that it was the same old bumblebee that darted in, still unable to overcome its irate wonder at a people who could be so quiet and serene. The sunlight flickered in here and there, and shadowy leaves moved noiselessly up and down the whitewashed wall. Only the occasional song of a bird was wanting to reproduce the former hour, but at this later season the birds seemed content with calls and chirpings, and in the July heat they were almost as silent as we were. But how weak and fanciful my June daydream now seemed! Then woman's influence on my life was but a romantic sentiment. I had then conjured up a pretty vista full of serene, quiet domestic joys, which were to be a solace merely of my real life of toil and ambition. I had thought myself launched on a shining tide that would bear me smoothly to a quiet home anchorage. But almost the first word that Emily Warren spoke broke the spell of my complacent, indolent dream, and I awoke to the presence of an earnest, large-souled woman who was my peer and in many respects my superior, whom, so far from being a mere household pet, could be counselor and friend and a daily inspiration. Instead of shrinking from the world with which I must grapple, she already looked out upon its tangled and cruel problems with clear, intelligent, courageous eyes. Single-handed, she had coped with it and won from it a place and respect, and yet with all her strength and fearlessness, she had kept her woman's heart gentle and tender. Oh, who could have better proof of this than I, who had seen her face bending over the little unconscious Zillah, and who had heard her low sob when she feared I might be dying? The two maidens sat side by side, and I was not good enough to think of anything better or purer than they. Ada, with her face composed to its meeting house quiet, but softened and made more beautiful by passing shades of thought. Still, it seemed almost as young and childlike as that of Zillah. Miss Warren's profile was less round and full, but it was more finely chiseled and was luminous with mind. The slightly higher forehead, the more delicately arched eyebrow, the deeper setting of her dark, changing eyes that were placed wide apart beneath the overhanging brow, the short, thin, tremulous upper lip, were all indications of the quick, informing spirit which made her face like a transparency through which her thoughts could often be guessed before spoken. And since they were good, noble, genial thoughts, they enhanced her beauty. And yet it had occurred to me more than once that if Miss Warren were a depraved woman, she could give to evil a deadly fascination. Are her thoughts wandering like mine? I mused. With kindling hope, I saw her face grow sad, and I even imagined that her pallor increased. For a long time she looked quietly and fixedly before her, as did Ada, and then she stole a shy, hesitating glance at Mr. Hearn by her side. But the banker seemingly had found the silent meeting a trifle dull, for his eyes were heavy, and all life and animation had faded out of his full white face. Was it my imagination, or did she slightly shrink from him? In an almost instantaneous flash, she turned a little more and glanced at me, and I was caught in the act of almost breathless scrutiny. A sudden red flamed in her cheeks, but not a friend of them all was more motionless than she at once became. My conscience smote me. Though I watched for her happiness as truly as my own, the old meeting house should have been a sanctuary even from the eyes of love. I knew from the expression of her face that she had not liked it, nor did I blame her. I was glad to have the silence of the meeting broken, for a venerable man rose slowly from the high seat and reverently enunciated the words: "The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. He maketh wars to cease unto the end of the earth. He breaketh the bow and cutteth the spear in sunder. He burneth the chariot in the fire. Be still and know that I am God." The quiet, reverent bowing of the heart to His will is often the most acceptable worship that we can offer, he began, and if he had stopped there the effect would have been perfect, but he began to talk and to ramble. With a sense of deep disappointment, I dreaded lest the hour should pass and that Mrs. Yocombe would not speak, but as the old gentleman sat down, that rapt look was on her face that I remembered seeing on the night of the storm. She rose, took off her deep Quaker bonnet, and laid it quietly on the seat beside her, but one saw that she was not thinking of it or of anything except the truth which filled her mind. Clasping her hands before her, she looked steadfastly toward heaven for a few moments, and then, in a low, sweet, penetrating monotone, repeated the words: "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." She paused a moment, and I gazed in wonder at her serene, uplifted face. She had spoken with such an utter absence of self-consciousness or regard for externals as to give the strong impression that the words had come again from heaven through her lips and were endowed with a new life and richer meaning, and now she seemed waiting for whatever else might be given to her. Could that inspired woman, who now looked as if she might have stood unabashed on the Mount of Transfiguration, be my genial, untiring nurse and the cheery matron of the farmhouse, whose deft hands had made the sweet light bread we had eaten this morning? I had long loved her, but now, as I realized as never before the grand compass of her womanly nature, I began to reverence her. A swift glance at Miss Warren revealed that the text had awakened an interest so deep as to suggest a great and present need, for the maiden was leaning slightly toward the speaker and waiting with parted lips. As I sat here, Mrs. Yocombe began, looking down upon us with a grave, gentle aspect. These words came to me as if spoken in my soul, and I am constrained to repeat them unto you. I'm impressed with the truth that peace is the chief need of the world, the chief need of every human heart. Beyond success, beyond prosperity, beyond happiness is the need of peace, the deep assured rest of the soul that is akin to the eternal calmness of Him who spake these words. The world at large is full of turmoil and trouble. The sounds of its wretched disquietude reach me even in this quiet place and at this quiet hour. I seem to hear the fierce uproar of battle, for while we are turning our thoughts up to the God of peace, misguided men are dealing death blows to their fellow men. I hear cries of rage, I hear the groans of the dying, But sadder than these bloody fields of open strife are the dark places of cruelty. I hear the clank of the prisoner's chain and the crack of the slave driver's whip. I see desperate and despairing faces revealing tortured souls to whom the light of each day brings more bitter wrongs, viler indignities, until they are ready to curse God for the burden of life. Sadder still, I hear the dark whisperings of those who would destroy the innocent and cast down the simple. I hear the satanic laugh of such as are false to sacred trusts and holy obligations, who ruthlessly as swine are rending hearts that have given all the pearls they had. From that sacred place, home, come to me hot words of strife, drunken, brutal blows, and the wailings of helpless women and children. Saddest of all earthly sounds, I hear the wild revelry of those who are not the victims of evil in others, but who, while madly seeking happiness, are blotting out all hope of happiness, and who are committing that crime of crimes, the destruction of their own immortal souls. Did I say the last was the saddest of earthly sounds? There comes to me another, at which my heart sinks. It is the sound of proud, arrogant voices who are explaining that faith is a delusion, that prayer is wasted breath, that the God of the Bible is a dream of old-time mystics, and that Christ died in vain. I hear the moan of Mary at the sepulchre repeated from thousands of hearts. They have taken away my Lord. O God, forgive those who would blot out the dearest hope which has ever sustained humanity. Can there be peace in a world wherein we can never escape these sad, terrible, discordant sounds? The words that I have repeated were spoken in just such a world when the din of evil was at its worst, and to those who must soon suffer all the wrong that the world could inflict. After a brief pause of silent waiting, she continued, "But is the turmoil of the world a faraway sound, like the sullen roar of angry waves beating on a shore that rises high and enduring, securing us safety and rest? Beyond the deep disquietude of the world at large is the deeper unrest of the human heart. No life can be so secluded and sheltered but that anxieties, doubts, fears, and foreboding will come with all their disturbing power. Often sorrows more bitter than death are hidden by smiling faces, and in our quiet country homes there are men and women carrying burdens that are crushing out hope and life. Mothers breaking their hearts over wayward sons and daughters, wives desperate because the men who wooed them as blushing maidens have forgotten their vows and have become swinish sots. Men disheartened because the sweet-faced girls that they thought would give them a home have become vile slatterns, busybodies, shrill-tongued shrews who banish the very thought of peace and rest, who waste their substance and eat out their hearts with care. Oh, the clouds of earth are not those which sweep across the sun, but those which rise out of unhappy hearts and evil lives. These are the clouds that gather over too many in a leaden pall, and it seems as if no light could ever break through them. There are hearts to whom life seems to promise one long, hopeless struggle to endure an incurable pain. Can there be peace for such unhappy ones? To just such human hearts were the words spoken, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you." Then came one of those little pauses that were quite as impressive as the preceding words. Although my interest was almost breathless, I involuntarily looked toward one whom I now associated with every thought. "Oh God!" I exclaimed mentally. "Can that be the aspect of a maiden happy in her love and hope?" Her face had become almost white, and across the pallor of her cheeks tear followed tear as from a full and bitter fountain. "Never in all this evil world," the speaker resumed, "was there such cruel, bitter mockery as these words would be if they were not true, if he who spake them had no right to speak them. And what right would he have to speak them if he were merely a man among men? A part of the world which never has and never can give peace to the troubled soul. How do we know these words are true? How do we know he has a right to speak them? Thank God, I know because he has kept his word to me. Thank God, millions know because he has proved his power to them. The scourged, persecuted, crucified disciples found that He was with them always, even unto the end. Oh, my friends, it is this living, loving, spiritual presence that uplifts and sustains the sinking heart when the whole great world could only stand helplessly by. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Yes, thank thee, Lord, not as the world. In spite of the world and the worst it can do, in spite of our evil and the worst it can do, in spite of our sorrows, our fears, our pains and losses, our bitter disappointments, Thou canst give peace. Thou hast given peace. No storm can harm the soul that rests on the rock of ages. And by He will say to the storm, Peace, be still, and the light of heaven will come. Then there shall be no more night. God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. The light and gladness of that blessed future seemed to have come into her sweet womanly face. I looked out of the window to hide tears of which I was fool enough to be ashamed. When she spoke again, her voice was low and pitiful, and her face full of the divinest sympathy. Dear friends, she said, it was not merely peace that He promised, but His peace. My peace I give unto you. Remember, it was the man of sorrows who spoke. Remember that He was acquainted with grief. Remember that years of toil and hardship were behind Him, and that Gethsemane and Calvary were before Him. Remember that one would betray Him, and that all would desert Him. When He spoke, the storm of the world's evil was breaking upon Him more cruelly and remorselessly than it ever has on any tempted soul. He suffered more because more able to suffer. But beneath all was the sacred calm of one who is right and who means to do right to the end, cost what it may. The peace that He promises is not immunity from pain or loss, or the gratification of the heart's earthly desires. His natural and earthly desires were not gratified. Often ours cannot be. His peace came from self-denial for the good of others, from the consciousness that He was doing His Father's will, and from the assurance that good would come out of the seeming evil. Suffer He must because He was human and in a world of suffering, but He chose to suffer that we might know that He understands us and sympathizes with us when we suffer. To each and to all He can say, I was tempted in all points like unto thee. When we wander, He goes out after us. When we fall, He lifts us up. When we faint, He takes us in His arms and carries us on His bosom. O great heart of love, Thy patience never tires, never wearies. Thou canst make good to us every earthly loss. Thy touch can heal every wound of the soul, even though life be one long martyrdom, yet through Thy presence it may be a blessed life, full of peace. Because our Lord was a man of sorrows, was He in love with sorrows? Or does He love to see storms gathering around His people? No, it was not with His sorrows, but with our sorrows that He was afflicted. He so loved the world that He could not be glad when we were sad. It is said that there is no record that Jesus ever smiled, but those little children whom He took in His arms and blessed know that He smiled. I doubt whether He ever saw a flower but that, no matter how weary from the hot day's long journey, He smiled back upon it. The flowers are but His smiles, and the world is full of them. Still, He is naturally and very justly associated with sorrow, for when on earth He sought out those in trouble, and the distressed and the suffering soon learned to fly to Him. What was the result? Were the shadows deepened? Was the suffering prolonged? Let the sisters of Bethany answer you. Let the widow of Nain answer you. Let the great host of the lame, blind, diseased, and leprous answer. Look into the gentle, serene eyes of Mary Magdalene, once so desperate and clouded by evil, and then know whether He brings sorrow or joy to the world. Just as the sun follows the night that it might bring the day, so the Sun of Righteousness seeks out all that is dark in our lives that He may shine it away. Gladness, then, should be the rule of our lives. Nothing to Him is so pleasing as gladness if it comes from the heart of pilgrims truly homeward bound. But if sorrow comes, oh, turn not to the world, for the best thing in it can give no peace, no rest. Simply do right and leave the results with him who said, even under the shadow of his cross, My peace I give unto you. Accept this message, dear friends, and let not your hearts be troubled, and neither let them be afraid. And she sat down and quietly closed her eyes. There was here and there a low sob from the women, and the eyes of some of the most rugged-featured men were moist. The hush that followed was broken by deep and frequent sighs. Mr. Yocombe sat with his face lifted heavenward, and I knew it was serene and thankful. The eyes of Reuben, who was beside me, rested on his mother in simple, loving devotion. As yet, she was his religion. Ada was looking a little wonderingly but sympathetically at Miss Warren, whose bowed head and fallen veil could not hide her deep emotion. The banker, too, looked at her even more wonderingly. At last, the most venerable man on the high seat gave his hand to another white-haired friend beside him, and the congregation began slowly and quietly to disperse. "Come, Reuben," I said in a whisper. "Let us get away, quick." He looked at me in surprise, but in a few moments the old meeting house was hidden behind us among the trees. Dapple's feet scarcely touched the ground, but I sat silent, absorbed, and almost overwhelmed. Didn't thee like what Mother said?" Reuben asked after a while, a little hurt. I felt at once that he misunderstood my silence, and I put my arm around his neck as I said, "Reuben, love and honor your mother the longest day you live. She is one among a million. Liked, it mattered little whether I liked it or not. She made it seem God's own truth. And to think, Richard, that if it hadn't been for thee— Hush, Reuben, to think rather that she waited on me for days and nights together. Well, I could turn Catholic and worship one saint." "I'm glad she's only mother," said the boy with a low laugh. "And Richard, she likes me to have a good time as much as I do myself. She always makes me mind, but she's been jolly good to me. Oh, I love her. Don't thee worry about that." "Well, whatever happens," I said with a deep breath, "I thank God for the day that brought me to her home." "So do I," said the boy. "So do we all. But confound Emily Warren's grandfather! I don't take to him. He thinks we're wonderfully simple folks, just about good enough to board him and that black-eyed witch of his. I do kind of like her a little bit. She's so saucy-like sometimes. One day she commenced ordering me around, and I stood and stared at the little miss in a way that she won't forget." "She'll learn to coax by and by, and then you'll do anything for her, Reuben." "Perhaps," he said with a half smile on his ruddy face. End of Book Second, Chapter 13. Book Second, Chapter 14 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book Second, Chapter 14. Love Teaching Ethics. On reaching the farmhouse, I went directly to my room, and I wished that I might stay there the rest of the day, but I was soon summoned to dinner. In Miss Warren's eyes still lingered the evidences of her deep feeling, but her expression was quiet, firm, and resolute. The effect of the sermon upon her was just what I anticipated, in case my hope had any foundation. It had bound her by what seemed the strongest of motives to be faithful to the man whom she believed had the right to her fealty. Well, I thought bitterly, life might have brought her a heavier cross than marrying a handsome millionaire, even though considerably her senior. I'm probably a conceited fool for thinking it any very great burden at all, but how then can I account? Well, well, time alone can unravel this snarl. One thing is certain, she will do nothing that she does not believe right, and after what Mrs. Yocombe said, I would not dare to wish her to do wrong. Mrs. Yocombe did not come down to dinner, and the meal was a quiet one. Mr. Yocombe's eyes glistened with a serene, happy light, but he ate sparingly and spoke in subdued tones. He reminded me of the quaint old scripture, "A man's wisdom maketh his face to shine." Whatever might be said against his philosophy, it produced good cheer and peace. Ada, too, was very quiet, but occasionally she glanced toward Miss Warren as if perplexed and somewhat troubled. Mr. Hearn seemed wrought up into quite a religious fervor. He was demonstratively tender and sympathetic toward the girl at his side, and waited on her with the effusive manner of one whose feelings must have some outlet. His appetite, however, did not flag, and I thought he seemed to enjoy his emotions and his dinner equally. "Mr. Morton," he said impressively, "you must have liked that sermon exceedingly." "Indeed, sir," I replied briefly, "I have scarcely thought whether I liked it or not." Both he and Miss Warren looked at me in surprise. Indeed, all did except Reuben. "I beg your pardon, but I thought Mrs. Yocombe expressed herself admirably," he said with somewhat of the air of championship. "She certainly expressed herself clearly. The trouble with me is that the sermon is just what Mrs. Yocombe would call it, a message, and one scarcely knows how to dodge it. I never had such a spiritual blow between the eyes before, and I think I'm a little stunned yet." A smile lighted up Miss Warren's face. "Mrs. Yocombe would like your tribute to her sermon, I think," she said. "What most bewilders me," I resumed, "is to think how Mrs. Yocombe has been waiting on me and taking care of me. I now feel like the peasant who was taken in and cared for by the royal family. I think our friend Mr. Morton is in what may be termed a frame of mind," said Mr. Hearn a little satirically. "Yes, sir, I am," I replied emphatically. "I believe that adequate causes should have some effects. It does not follow, however, that my frame of mind is satisfactory to any one, least of all to Mrs. Yocombe." "Your contact with the truth," said Mr. Hearn, laughing, "is somewhat like many people's first experience of the ocean. You are much stirred up, but have not yet reached the point of yielding to the mysterious malady." I was disgusted and was about to reply with a sarcastic compliment upon the elegance of his illustration when a look of pain upon Miss Warren's face checked me, and I said nothing. Lack of delicacy was one of Mr. Hearn's gravest faults. While courtly, polished, and refined in externals, he lacked in tact and nicety of discrimination. He often said things which a finer fibered but much worse man would never have said. He had an abundance of intellect, great shrewdness, vast force of will and organizing power, but not much ideality or imagination. This lack rendered him incapable of putting himself in the place of another and of appreciating their feelings, moods, and motives. The most revolting thought to me of his union with Miss Warren was that he would never appreciate her. He greatly admired and respected her, but his spiritual eyes were too dim to note the exquisite bloom on her character, or to detect the evanescent lights and shades of thought and feeling of which to me her mobile face gave so many hints. He would expect her to be like the July days now passing, warm, bright, cloudless, and in keeping with his general prosperity. They will disappoint each other inevitably, I thought, and it's strange that her clear eyes cannot see it when mine can. It is perhaps the strongest evidence of her love for him, since love is blind. Still, she may love and yet be able to see his foibles and failings clearly. Thousands of women do this. But whether the silken cord of love or the chain of supposed duty binds her to him now, I fear that Mrs. Yocombe's sermon has made her his for all time. Her manner confirmed my surmise, for she apparently gave me little thought and was unobtrusively attentive and devoted to him. He had the good taste to see that further personal remarks were not agreeable, and since his last attempt at witticism fell flat, did not attempt any more. Our table talk flagged, and we hastened through the meal. After it was over, he asked, "Emily, what shall we do this afternoon?" "Anything you wish," she replied quietly. "That's the way it will always be," I muttered as I went dejectedly to my room. "Through all his life it has been anything you wish, and now it would seem as if religion itself had become his ally. There is nothing to me so wonderful as some men's fortune. Earth and heaven seem in league to forward their interests. But why was she so moved at the meeting house? Was it merely religious sensibility? It might have been we were all moved deeply. Was it my imagination, or did she really shrink from him and then glance guiltily at me? Even if she had, it might have been a momentary repulsion caused by his drowsy, heavy aspect at the time, just as his remark at dinner gave her an unpleasant twinge. These little back eddies are no proof that there is not a strong central current. Can it be that she was sorrowful in the meeting house for my sake only? I've had strong proof of her wonderful kindness of heart. Well, God bless her anyway. I'll wait and watch till I know the truth. I suppose I'm the worst heathen Mrs. Yocombe ever preached to, but I'm going to secure Emily Warren's happiness at any cost. If she truly loves this man, I'll go away and fight it out so sturdily that she need not worry. That's what her sermon means for me. I'm not going to pump up any religious sentiment. I don't feel any. It's like walking into a bare room to have a turn with a thumbscrew. But Mrs. Yocombe has hedged me up to just this course. Oh, the gentle, inexorable woman! Satan himself might well tremble before her. There is but one that I fear more, and that's the woman I love most. Gentle, tender-hearted as she is more inexorable than Mrs. Yocombe. It's a little strange, but I doubt whether there is anything in the universe that so inspires a man with awe as a thoroughly good, large-minded woman. I could not sleep that afternoon, and at last became so weary of the conflict between my hope and fear that I was glad to hear Miss Warren at the piano, playing softly some old English hymns. The day was growing cool and shadowy, but I hoped that before it passed I might get a chance to say something to her which would give a different aspect to the concluding words of Mrs. Yocombe's sermon. I had determined no longer to avoid her society, but rather to seek it whenever I could in the presence of others, and especially of her affianced. They had returned from a long afternoon in the arbor, which I knew must occasion Miss Warren some unpleasant thoughts, and the banker was sitting on the piazza chatting with Ada. I strolled into the parlor with as easy and natural a manner as I could assume, and taking my old seat by the window, said quietly, "Please go on playing, Miss Warren." She turned on me one of her swift looks which always gave me the impression that she saw all that was in my mind. Her color rose a little, but she continued playing for a time. Then, with her right hand evoking low, sweet chords, she asked with a conciliatory smile, "Have you been thinking over Mrs. Yocombe's words this afternoon?" "Not all the time, no. Have you?" "How could I all the time?" "Oh, I think you can do anything under heaven you make up your mind to do," I said with a slight laugh. The look she gave now was a little apprehensive, and I added hastily, "I had one thought that I don't mind telling you, for I think it may be a pleasant one, though it must recall that which is painful. The thought occurred to me when Mrs. Yocombe was speaking, and since, that your brother had perfect peace as he stood in that line of battle." She turned eagerly toward me, and tears rushed into her eyes. "You may be right," she said in a low, tremulous tone. "Well, I feel sure I'm right. I know it, if he was anything like you." "Oh, then I doubt it. I'm not at all brave as he was. You ought to know that." "You have the courage that a veteran general most values in a soldier. You might be half dead from terror, but you wouldn't run away. Besides," I added, smiling, "you would not be afraid of shot and shell, only the noise of a battle. In this respect your brother, no doubt, differed from you. In the grand consciousness of right and in his faithful performance of duty, I believe his face was as serene as the aspect of Mr. Yocombe when he looked at the coming storm. As far as peace is concerned, his heaven began on earth. I envy him." "Mr. Morton, I thank you for these words about my brother," she said very gently and with a little pathetic quaver in her voice. "They have given me a comforting association with that awful day. Oh, I thank God for the thought. Remembering what Mrs. Yocombe said, it reconciles me to it all, as I never thought I could be reconciled. If Herbert believed that it was his duty to be there, it was best he should be there. How strange it is that you should think of this first and not I." "Will you pardon me if I take exception to one thing you say? I do not think it follows that he ought to have been there simply because he felt it right to be there." "Why, Mr. Morton, ought one not to do right at any and every cost? That seemed to me the very pith of Mrs. Yocombe's teaching, and I think she made it clear that it's always best to do right." "I think so too, most emphatically. But what is right, Mrs. Warren?" "That's too large a question for me to answer in the abstract. But is not the verdict of conscience right for each one of us? I can't think so, I replied with a shrug. About every grotesque, horrible act ever committed in this world has been sanctioned by conscience. Delicate women have worn haircloth and walked barefooted on cold pavements in midnight penance. The devil is scarcely more cruel than the church for ages taught that God was. It's true that Christ's life was one of self-sacrifice, but was there any useless, mistaken self-sacrifice in it? If God is anything like Mrs. Yocombe, nothing could be more repugnant to him than blunders of this kind. She looked at me with a startled face, and I saw that my words had unsettled her mind. If conscience cannot guide, what can? She faltered. Is not conscience God's voice within us? No, conscience may become God's worst enemy, that is, any God that I could worship or even respect. Mr. Morton, you frighten me. How can I do right unless I follow my conscience? Yes, I said sadly. You would, in the good old times, have followed it over stony pavements in midnight penance, or now into any thorny path which it pointed out. And I believe that many such paths lead away from the God of whom Mrs. Yocombe spoke today. Miss Warren, I'm a man of the world, and probably you think my views on these subjects are not worth much. It's strange that your own nature does not suggest to you the only sure guide. It seems to me that conscience should always go to truth for instructions. The men who killed your brother thought they were right as truly as he did, but history will prove that they were wrong, as so many sincere people have been in every age. He did not suffer and die uselessly, for the truth was beneath his feet and in his heart. Dear, brave, noble Herbert, she sighed. Oh, that God had spared him to me. I wish he had, I said with quiet emphasis. I wish he was with you here and now. Again she gave me a questioning, troubled look through her tears. Then you believe truth to be absolutely binding? She asked in a low voice. Yes, in science, religion, ethics, or human action, nothing can last, nothing can end well that is not built squarely on truth. She became very pale, but she turned quietly to her piano as she said, You are right, Mr. Morton. There can be no peace, not even self-respect, without truth. My nature would be pitiful indeed if it did not teach me that. She had interpreted my words in a way that intensified the influence of Mrs. Yocombe's sermon. To be false to the trust that she had led her affianced to repose in her still seemed the depth of degradation. I feared that she would take this view at first, but believed, if my hope had any foundation, she would think my words over so often that she would discover a different meaning. And my hope was strengthened. If she loved Mr. Hearn, why did she turn, pale and quiet, to her piano, which had always appeared a refuge to her, when I had seemingly spoken words that not only sanctioned but made the course which harmonized with her love imperative? Even the possibility that in the long days and nights of my delirium I had unconsciously wooed and won her heart so thrilled and overcame me that I dared not trust myself longer in her presence. And I went out on the piazza, a course eminently satisfactory to Mr. Hearn, no doubt. I think he regarded our interview as becoming somewhat extended. He had glanced at me from time to time, but my manner had been too quiet to disturb him, and he could not see Miss Warren's face. The words he overheard suggested a theological discussion rather than anything of a personal nature. It had been very reassuring to see Miss Warren turn from me as if my words had ceased to interest her. And my coming out to talk with Ada confirmed the impression made by my manner all along, that we were not very congenial spirits. It also occurred to me that he did not find chatting with Ada a very heavy cross, for never had she looked prettier than on that summer evening. But now that Miss Warren was alone, he went in and sat down by her, saying so loudly that I could not help hearing him as I stood by the window, I think you must have worsted Mr. Morton in your theological discussion, for he came out looking as if he had a great deal to think about that was not exactly to his taste, but Miss Ada will. And then his companion began playing something that drowned his voice. End of Book 2nd, Chapter 14. Book Second, Chapter 15 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book Second, Chapter 15. Don't Think of Me. Mrs. Yocombe appeared at supper serene and cheerful, but she was paler than usual, and she still looked like one who had but just descended from a lofty spiritual height. No reference whatever was made to the morning. Mrs. Yocombe no longer spoke on religious themes directly, but she seemed to me the gospel embodied, as with natural kindly grace she presided at her home table. Her husband beamed on her and looked as if his cup was overflowing. Reuben's frank boyish eyes often turned toward her in their simple devotion, while Zillah, who sat next to her, had many a whispered confidence to give. Ada's accent was gentle and her manner thoughtful. Miss Warren looked at her from time to time with a strange wistfulness, looked as if the matron possessed a serenity and peace that she coveted. "Emily," said Mr. Yocombe, "thee doesn't think music's wicked, does thee?" "No, sir, nor do you either." "What does thee think of that, mother?" "I think Emily converted thee over to her side before she had been here 2 days." "Thee's winked very hard at my apostasy, mother. I'm inclined to think thee was converted too on the 3rd or 4th day if thee'd own up." "No," said Mrs. Yocombe with a smile at her favorite. "Emily won my heart on the 1st day, and I accepted piano and all." "Why, Mrs. Yocombe," I exclaimed, for I could not forego the chance to vindicate myself, "I've never considered you a precipitate, ill-balanced person." Miss Warren's cheeks were scarlet, and I saw that she understood me well. I think Mrs. Yocombe guessed my meaning too, for her smile was a little peculiar as she remarked demurely, "Women are different from men. They know almost immediately whether they like a person or not. I liked thee in half a day." "You like sinners on principle, Mrs. Yocombe. I think it was my general depravity and heathenism that won your regard." "No, as a woman I liked thee. Thee isn't as bad as thee seems." "Mr. Yocombe, I hope you don't object to this, for I must assure you most emphatically that I don't." "Mother's welcome to love thee all she pleases," said the old gentleman, laughing. "Indeed, I think I egg her on to it." "Good friends," said Miss Warren with her old mirthful look, "you'll turn Mr. Morton's head. You should be more considerate." I am indeed bewildered. Miss Warren's keen eyes have detected my weak point. "A man with so stout a heart," Mr. Hearn began, "could well afford—" and then he hesitated. "To be weak-headed," I said, finishing his sentence. "I fear you are mistaken, sir. I can't afford it at all." "Thee was clear-headed enough to get around mother in half an hour," said the old gentleman again, laughing heartily. "It took me several months." "Thee was a little blind, father. I wasn't going to let thee see how much I thought of thee till I had kept thee waiting a proper time." "That's rich!" I cried, and I laughed as I had not since my illness. "How long is a proper time, Mrs. Yocombe? I remember being once told that a woman was a mystery that a man could never solve. I fear it's true." "Who told you that?" asked Mr. Hearn, for I think he noticed my swift glance at Miss Warren, who looked a little conscious. "As I think of it, I may have read it in a newspaper," I said demurely. "I'm not flattered by your poor memory, Mr. Morton," remarked Miss Warren quietly. "I told you that myself when you were so mystified by my fearlessness of Dapple and my fear of the cow." "I've learned that my memory is sadly treacherous, Miss Warren." "A man who is treacherous only in memory may well be taken as a model," remarked Mr. Hearn benignly. "Would you say that of one who forgot to pay you his debts?" "What do you owe me, Mr. Morton?" "I'm sure I don't know. Goodwill, I suppose Mrs. Yocombe would suggest." "Well, sir, I feel that I owe you a great deal, perhaps more than I realize, as I recall your promptness on that memorable night of the storm." "I was prompt, I'll admit that," I said grimly, looking at the ceiling. "Mr. Yocombe, how long would it have taken the house to burn up if the fire had not been extinguished?" Mr. Hearn asked. "The interior," replied Mr. Yocombe very gravely, "would all have been in flames in a very few moments, for it's old and dry." Ugh! Exclaimed Ada shudderingly. Richard! I put my finger on my lips. Miss Ada, I interrupted, I'd rather be struck by lightning than hear any more about that night. Yes, said Miss Warren desperately. I wish I could forget that night forever. I never wished to forget the expression on your face, Miss Warren, when you knew Zillah was alive. If that didn't please God, nothing in this world ever did. Oh, hush, she cried. Emily, I think you cannot have told me all that happened. I can't think of it any more, she said, and her face was full of trouble. I certainly don't know and have never thought how I looked. Mr. Morton seems to have been cool enough to have been very observant, said the banker keenly. I was wet enough to be cool, sir. Miss Warren said that I was not fit to be seen, and the doctor bundled me out of the room, fearing I would frighten Zillah into hysterics. Hey, Zillah, what do you think of that? I think the doctor was silly. I wouldn't be afraid of thee any more than of Emily. Please let us talk and think of something else, Miss Warren pleaded. I don't want to forget what I owe to Richard, said Reuben a little indignantly. I trod on his foot under the table. Thee needn't try to stop me, Richard Morton, continued the boy passionately. I couldn't have got mother out alone, and I'd never left her. Where would we be, Emily Warren, if it hadn't been for Richard? In heaven, I said, laughing, for I was determined to prevent a scene. Well, I hope so, Reuben muttered, but I don't mind being in mother's dining room. Even Mrs. Yoakum's gravity gave way at this speech. As we rose from the table, Zillah asked innocently, Emily, is thee crying or laughing? I hardly know myself, she faltered, and went hastily to her room, but she soon came down again, looking very resolute. Emily, said Mr. Yoakum, since thee and mother doesn't think music's wicked, I have a wonderful desire to hear thee sing again. Tell me the old story, as thee did on the night of the storm. In spite of her brave eyes and braver will, her lip trembled. I was cruel enough to add, and I would be glad to listen to the 12th nocturne once more. For some reason, she gave me a swift glance full of reproach. I will listen to anything, I said quickly. Mr. Hearn looked a little like a man who feared that there might be subterranean fires beneath his feet. I will not promise more than to be chorister tonight, she said, sitting down to the piano with her back toward us. Let us have familiar hymns that all can sing. Miss Ada has a sweet voice, and Mr. Morton, no doubt, is hiding his talent in a napkin. There's a book for you, sir. I'm sorry it doesn't contain the music. It doesn't matter, I said. I'm equally familiar with Choctaw. Adela, Zillah, you come and stand by me. Your little voices are like the birds. We all gathered in the old parlor and spent an hour that I shall never forget. I had a tolerable tenor and an ear made fairly correct by hearing much music. Mr. Hearn did not sing, but he seemingly entered into the spirit of the occasion. Before very long, Miss Warren and I were singing some things together. Mr. Hearn, no doubt, compared our efforts unfavorably with what he had heard in the city, but the simple people of the farmhouse were much pleased and repeatedly asked us to continue. As I was leaning over Miss Warren's shoulder, finding a place in the hymn book on the stand, she breathed softly, Have you told them you are going tomorrow? No, I replied. Can you leave such friends? Yes. You ought not. It would hurt them cruelly. And she made some runs on the piano to hide her words. If you say I ought not to go, I'll stay. Ah, this is the one I was looking for, I said in a matter-of-fact tone. But she played the music with some strange slips and errors. Her hands were nervous and trembling, and never was the frightened look that I had seen before more distinctly visible. After we had sung a stanza or two, she rose and said, I think I'm getting a little tired and the room seems warm. Wouldn't you like to take a walk? She asked Mr. Hearn, coming over to his side. He arose with alacrity and they passed out together. I did not see her again that night. The next morning, finding me alone for a moment, she approached hesitatingly and said, I don't think I ought to judge for you. Do you wish me to go? I asked sadly, interpreting her thought. She became very pale and turned away as she replied, Perhaps you had better. I think you would rather go. No, I'd rather stay, but I'll do as you wish. She did not reply and went quickly to her piano. I turned and entered the dining room where Mrs. Yocombe and Ada were clearing away the breakfast. Mr. Yocombe was writing in his little office adjoining. I think it is time I said goodbye and went back to New York. In the outcry that followed, Miss Warren's piano became silent. Richard Morton, Mrs. Yocombe began almost indignantly, if thee hasn't any regard for thyself, thee should have some for thy friends. Thee isn't fit to leave home, and this is thy home now. Thee doesn't call thy hot rooms in New York home, so I don't see as thee has got any other. Just so sure as thee goes back to New York now, thee'll be sick again. I won't hear to it. Thee's just beginning to improve a little. Ada looked at me through reproachful tears, but she did not say anything. Mr. Yocombe dropped his pen and came out, looking quite excited. I'll send for Dr. Bates and have him lay his commands on thee, he said. I won't take thee to the depot, and thee isn't able to walk halfway there. Here, Emily, come and talk reason to this crazy man. He says he's going back to New York. He ought to be put in a straitjacket. Doesn't thee think so? Her laugh was anything but simple and natural as she said, I do indeed. Mr. Hearn had joined her. What would thee do in such an extreme case of mental disorder? Treat him as they did in the good old times, get a chain and lock him up on bread and water. Would thee then enjoy thy dinner? That wouldn't matter if he were cured. I think Mr. Morton would prefer hot New York to the remedies that Emily prescribes, said Mr. Hearn, with his smiling face full of vigilance. Richard, said Mrs. Yocombe, putting both her hands on my arm, I should feel more hurt than I can tell thee if thee leaves us now. Why, Mrs. Yocombe, I didn't think you would care so much. Then thee's very blind, Richard. I didn't think thee'd say that. You cut deep now. Suppose I must go. Why must thee go, just as thee is beginning to gain? Thee is as pale as a ghost this minute, and thee doesn't weigh much more than half as much as I do. Still, we don't want to put an unwelcome constraint on thee. I took her hand in both of mine as I said earnestly, God forbid that I should ever escape from any constraint that you put upon me. Well, I won't go today, and I'll see what word my mail brings me. And I went up to my room, not trusting myself to glance at the real controller of my action, but hoping that something would occur which would make my course clear. As I came out of my room to go down to dinner, Miss Warren intercepted me, saying eagerly, Mr. Morton, don't go. If you should be ill again in New York, as Mrs. Yocombe says. I won't be ill again. Please don't go, she entreated. I shouldn't have said what I did. You would be ill. Mrs. Yocombe would never forgive me. Miss Warren, I will do what you wish. I wish what is best for you, only that. I fear I cloud your happiness. You are too kind-hearted. She smiled a little bitterly. Please stay. Don't think of me. Again, I repeat, you are too kind-hearted. Never imagine that I can be happy if you are not. And I looked at her keenly, but she turned away instantly, saying, Well, then, I'll be very happy and will test you. And she returned to her room. Mrs. Yocombe, I said quietly at the dinner table, I've written to the office saying that friends do not think I'm well enough to return yet, and asking to have my leave extended. She beamed upon me as she replied, Now thee's sensible. For once, I added. I expect to see thee clothed and in thy right mind yet, she said, with a little reassuring nod. Your hopeful disposition is contagious, I replied, laughing. I'd like to see thee get to the depot till we're ready to let thee go, said Reuben emphatically. Yes, added Mr. Yocombe with his genuine laugh. Reuben and I are in league against thee. You look like two dark, muttering conspirators, I responded. And to think thee was going away without asking me, Zillah put in, shaking her bright curls at me. Well, you all have made this home to me, true enough. The best part of me will be left here when I do go. At these words, Ada gave me a shy, blushing smile. Mr. Morton, will you please pass me the vinegar? Said Miss Warren in the most matter-of-fact tone. "Wouldn't you prefer the sugar?" I asked. "No, I much prefer the vinegar." Mr. Hearn also smiled approvingly. "Don't be too sure of your prey," I said mentally. "If she's not yours at heart, which I doubt more than ever, you shall never have her." But she puzzled me for a day or two. If she were not happy, she simulated happiness and made my poor acting a flimsy pretense in contrast. She and the banker took long rides together, and she was always exceedingly cheerful on her return, a little too much so, I tried to think. She ignored the past as completely as possible, and while her manner was kind to me, she had regained her old-time delicate brusqueness and rarely lost a chance to give me a friendly fillip. Indeed, I had never known her to be so brilliant, and her spirits seemed unflagging. Mr. Yocombe was delighted, and in his large appetite for fun applauded and joined in every phase of our home gayety. There was too much hilarity for me, and my hope failed steadily. Now that her conscience is clear in regard to me, now that I have remained in the country and am getting well, her spirits have come up with a bound, I reasoned moodily. I began to resume my old tactics of keeping out of the way and of taking long rambles, but I tried to be cheerfulness itself in her presence. On Wednesday, Miss Warren came down to breakfast in a breezy, airy way, and scarcely speaking to me as I stood in the doorway, she flitted out and was soon romping with Zillah and Adela. As she returned, flushed and panting, I said with a smile, "You are indeed happy. I congratulate you. I believe I've never had the honor of doing that yet." "But you said that you would be happy also." "Am I not?" "No." "Well, it doesn't matter since you are." "Oh, then I'm no longer kind-hearted. You take Reuben's view that I'm a heartless monster. He scarcely speaks to me any more. You think I propose to be happy now under all circumstances." "I wish you would be. I hope you may be. What's the use of my acting my poor little farce any longer? I don't deceive you a mite. But I'm not going to mope and pine, Miss Warren. Don't think of me so poorly as that. I'm not the first man who has had to face this thing. I'm going back to work, and I am going next Monday, surely." "I've no doubt of it," she said with sudden bitterness. "And you'll get over it bravely, very bravely." And she started off toward the barn where Reuben was exercising Dapple, holding him with a long rope. The horse seemed wild with life and spirit. And did I not know that the beautiful creature had not a vicious trait I should have feared for the boy? Just at this moment Dapple in his play slipped off his headstall and was soon careering around the dooryard in mad glee of freedom. In vain Reuben tried to catch him, for the capricious beast would allow him to come almost within grasp and then would bound away. Miss Warren stood under a tree laughing till the boy was hot and angry. Then she cried, "I'll catch him for you, Reuben." I uttered a loud shout of alarm as she darted out before the galloping horse and threw up her arms. Dapple stopped instantly. In another second she had her arm around his arched neck and was stroking his quivering nostrils. Her poise was full of grace and power. Her eyes were shining with excitement and triumph. And to make her mastery seem more complete, she leaned her face against his nose. Dapple looked down at her in a sort of mild wonder and was as meek as a lamb. "There, Reuben, come and take him," she said to the boy who stared at her with his mouth open. "Emily Warren, I don't know what to make of thee!" he exclaimed. Never before had I so felt my unutterable loss, and I said to her almost savagely in a low tone as she approached, "Is that the means you take to cure me? Doing the bravest thing I ever saw a woman do and looking like a goddess. I was an unspeakable fool for staying." Her head drooped and she walked dejectedly toward the house, not seeming to think or care for the exclamations and expostulations which greeted her. "Why, Emily, were you mad?" cried Mr. Hearn above the rest. And now that the careering horse was being led away, he hastened down to meet her. "No, I'm tired and I want a cup of coffee," I heard her say, and then I followed Reuben to the barn. "She's cut me out with Dapple," said the boy with a crestfallen air. Already I repented of my harshness, into which I had been led by the sharpest stress of feeling, and was eager to make amends. Since the night of the storm, honest Reuben had given me his unwavering loyalty. Still less than Ada was he inclined or able to look beneath the surface of things, and he had gained the impression from Miss Warren's words that she was inclined to make light of their danger on that occasion and to laugh at me generally. In his sturdy championship on my behalf, he had been growing cold and brusque toward one whom he now associated with the wealthy middle-aged banker and city style generally. Reuben was a genuine country lad and was instinctively hostile to Fifth Avenue. While Mr. Hearn was polite to his father and mother, he quite naturally laid more stress on their business relations than on those of friendship, and was not slow in asking for what he wanted, and his luxurious tastes led him to require a good deal. Reuben had seen his mother worried and his father inconvenienced not a little. They made no complaint and had no cause for any, for the banker paid his way liberally. But the boy had not reached the age when the financial phase of the question was appreciated, and his prejudice was not unnatural, for unconsciously, especially at first, Mr. Hearn had treated them all as inferiors. He now was learning to know them better, however. There was nothing plebeian in Ada's beauty, and he would have been untrue to himself had he not admired her very greatly. It was my wish to lead the boy to overcome his prejudice against Miss Warren, so I said, "You are mistaken, Reuben. Dapple is just as fond of you as ever. It was only playfulness that made him cut up so. But, Reuben, Dapple is a very sensible horse, and when he saw a girl that was brave enough to stand right out before him when it seemed that he must run over her, he respected and liked such a girl at once. It was the bravest thing I ever saw. Any other horse would have trampled on her, but Dapple has the nature of a gentleman. So have you, Reuben, and I know you will go and speak handsomely to her. I know you will speak to her as Dapple would could he speak. By Jove, it was splendid, and you are man enough to know it was." "Yes, Richard, it was. I know that as well as thee. There isn't a girl in the country that would have dared to do it, and very few men. And to think she's a city girl! To tell the truth, Emily Warren is all the time making game of thee, and that's why I'm mad at her." "I don't think you understand her. I don't mind it because she never means anything ill-natured. And then she loves your mother almost as much as you do. I give you my word, Reuben, Miss Warren and I are best of friends, and you need not feel as you do because I don't." "Oh, well, if thee puts it that way, I'll treat her different. I'll tell thee what it is, Richard. I'm one that sticks to my friends through thick and thin." "Well, you can't do anything so friendly to me as to make everything pleasant for Miss Warren. How is her favorite, old Plod?" I asked, following him into the barn. "Old Plod be hanged! She hasn't been near him in 2 weeks." "What?" I exclaimed exultantly. "What's the matter with thee, Richard? Thee and Emily are both queer. I can't make you out." "Well, Reuben, we mean well. You mustn't expect too much of people." End of Book Second, Chapter 15. Book Second, Chapter 16 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book Second, Chapter 16. Richard. I came in to breakfast with Reuben, feeling that Dapple had been more of a gentleman than I had, for he had treated the maiden with gentleness and courtesy, while I had thought first of myself. She looked up at me as I entered so humbly and deprecatingly that I wished that I had bitten my tongue out rather than have spoken so harshly. Straightforward Reuben went to the girl and, holding out his hand, said, "Emily, I want to ask thy forgiveness. I've been a bear toward thee. Thee's the bravest girl I ever saw. No country girl would have dared to do what thee did. I didn't need to have Richard lecture me and tell me that. But I thought thee was kind of down on Richard, and I've a way of standing by my friends." With a face like a peony, she turned and took both of the boy's hands as she said warmly, "Thank you, Reuben. I'd take a much greater risk to win your friendship, and if you'll give it to me, I'll be very proud of it. You are going to make a genuine man." "Yes, Reuben, thee'll make a man," said his mother with a low laugh. "Thee is as blind as a man already." I looked at her instantly, but she dropped her eyes demurely to her plate. I saw that Mr. Hearn was watching me, and so did not look at Miss Warren. Well, he said irritably, I don't like such escapades, and Emily, if anything of the kind happens again, I'll have to take you to a safer place. His face was flushed, but hers was very pale. It won't happen again, she said quietly without looking up. Richard, said Mr. Yocombe as if glad to change the subject, I've got to drive across the country on some business. I will have to be gone all day. Would thee like to go with me? Certainly, I'll go with you to the ends of the earth. That would be too far away from mother. Thee always pulls me back very soon, doesn't thee? Well, I know thee comes, replied his wife. Don't tire Richard out. He isn't strong yet. Richard, said Mr. Yocombe as we were driving up a long hill, I want to congratulate thee on thy course toward Emily Warren. Thee's a strong-minded, sensible man. I saw that thee was greatly taken with her at first, and no wonder. Besides, I couldn't help hearing what thee said when out of thy mind. Mother and I kept the children away then, and Dr. Bates had the wink from me to be discreet. But thee's been a sensible man since thee got up, and put the whole thing away from thee very bravely. Mr. Yocombe, I won't play the hypocrite with you. I love her better than my own soul. Thee does? He said in strong surprise. Yes, and I ought to have gone away long ago, I fear. How could I see her as she appeared this morning and not almost worship her? The old gentleman gave a long, low whistle. I guess mother meant me when she said men were blind. I was silent, not daring, of course, to say that I hoped she meant me, but what I had heard and seen that morning had done much to confirm my hope. Well, said the old gentleman, I can scarcely blame thee, since she is what she is, and I can't help saying, too, that I think thee would make her happier than that man can with all his money. I don't think he appreciates her. She will be only a part of his great possessions. Well, Mr. Yocombe, I've but these requests to make. Keep this to yourself, and don't interpose any obstacles to my going next Monday. Don't worry about me. I'll keep up. And a man who will have to work as I must won't have time to mope. I won't play the weak fool, for I'd rather have your respect and Mrs. Yocombe's than all Mr. Hearn's millions, and Miss Warren's respect is absolutely essential to me. Then, thee thinks that mother and Emily know? Who can hide anything from such women? They look through us as if we were glass. Mother's sermon meant more for thee than I thought. Yes, I felt as if it were preached for me. I hope I may be the better for it some day, but I've too big a fight on my hands now to do much else. You will now understand why I wish to get away so soon, and why I can't come back till I've gained a strength that is not bodily. I wouldn't like you to misunderstand me after your marvelous kindness, and so I'm frank. Besides, you're the kind of man that would thaw an icicle. Your nature is large and gentle, and I don't mind letting you know. Richard, we're getting very frank, and I'm going to be more so. I don't like the way Mr. Hearn sits and looks at Ada. Oh, you needn't worry about him. Mr. Hearn is respectability itself. But he's wonderfully fond of good things and pretty things. His great house on Fifth Avenue is full of them, and he looks at Miss Ada as he would at a fine oil painting. Thee speaks charitably of him under the circumstances. I ought to try to do him justice, since I hate him so cordially. Well, said the old gentleman, laughing, that's a new way of putting it. Thee's honest, Richard. If I wasn't, I'd have no business in your society. I'm worried about Emily, broke out my companion. She was a little thin and worn from her long session of work when she came to us lately, but the first week she picked up daily. While thee was so sick, she seemed more worried than anyone, and I had much ado to get her to eat enough to keep a bird alive, but it's been worst for the last 2 weeks. She has seemed much brighter lately for some reason, but the flesh just seems to drop off of her. She takes a wonderful hold of my feelings, and I can't help troubling about her. Mr. Yocombe, your words torture me, I cried. It is not my imagination, then. Can she love that man? Well, she has a queer way of showing it, but it is one of those things that an outsider can't meddle with. I was moody and silent the rest of the day, and Mr. Yocombe had the tact to leave me much to myself. but I was not under the necessity of acting my poor farce before him. The evening was quite well advanced when we reached the farmhouse, but Mrs. Yocombe had a royal supper for us, and she said everyone had insisted on waiting till we returned. Mr. Hearn had quite recovered his complacency, and I gathered from this fact that Miss Warren had been very devoted. Such was his usual aspect when everything was pleasing to him. But she who had added so much to his life had seemingly drained her own, for she looked so pale and thin that my heart ached. There were dark lines under her eyes, and she appeared exceedingly wearied, as if the day had been one long effort. She can't love him, I thought. It's impossible. Confound him. He's the blindest man of us all. Oh, that I had her insight, that I might unravel this snarl at once, for it would kill me to see her looking like that much longer. What's the use of my going away? I've been away all day. She has had the light of his smiling countenance uninterruptedly, and see how worn she is. Can it be that my hateful words hurt her, and that she is grieving about me only? It's impossible. Unselfish regard for another could not go so far if her own heart was at rest. She is doing her best to laugh and talk and to seem cheerful, but her acting now is poorer than mine ever was. She is tired out. She seems like a soldier who is fighting mechanically after spirit, courage, and strength are gone. Mr. Hearn informed Mr. Yocombe that important business would require his presence in New York for a few days. It's an enterprise that involves immense interest on both sides of the ocean, and there's to be quite a gathering of capitalists. Your paper will be full of it before very long, Mr. Morton. I'm always glad to hear of any grist for our mill, I said. Mrs. Yocombe, please excuse me. I'm selfish enough to prefer the cool piazza. But thee hasn't eaten anything. Oh, yes, I have, and I made a huge dinner, I replied carelessly, and sauntered out and lighted a cigar. Instead of coming out on the piazza as I hoped, Miss Warren bade Mr. Hearn good night in the hall, and, pleading fatigue, went to her room. She was down to see him off in the morning, and at his request accompanied him to the depot. I was reading on the piazza when she returned, and I hastened to assist her from the rockaway. Miss Warren, I exclaimed in deep solicitude, this long, hot ride has been too much for you. Perhaps it has, she replied briefly without meeting my eyes. I'll go and rest. She pleaded a headache and did not come down to dinner. Mrs. Yocombe returned from her room with a troubled face. I had resolved that I would not seek to see her alone while Mr. Hearn was away, and so resumed my long rambles. When I returned about supper time, she was sitting on the piazza watching Adela and Zillah playing with their dolls. She did not look up as I took a seat on the steps not far away. At last I began, "Can I tell you that I am very sorry you have been ill today?" "It wasn't dangerous, as country people say," she replied a little brusquely. "You look as if Dapple might run over you now." "A kitten might run over me," she replied briefly, still keeping her eyes on the children. By and by she asked, "Why do you look at me so intently, Mr. Morton?" "I beg your pardon." "That's not answering my question." "Suppose I deny that I was looking at you. You have not condescended to glance at me yet." "You had better not deny it." "Well, then, to tell you the truth, as I find I always must, I was looking for some trace of mercy. I was thinking whether I could venture to ask forgiveness for being more of a brute than Dapple yesterday." "Have your words troubled you very much?" "They have indeed." "Well, they've troubled me too. You think I'm heartless, Mr. Morton," and she arose and went to her piano. I followed her instantly. "Won't you forgive me?" I asked. "I've repented." "Oh, nonsense, Mr. Morton. You know as well as I do that I'm the one to ask forgiveness." "No, I don't," I said in a low, passionate tone. "I fear you are grieving about what you can't help." "Can't help?" she repeated, flushing. "Yes, my being here makes you unhappy. If I knew it, I'd go tonight." "And you think that out of sight would be out of mind?" she said with a strange smile. "Great God, I don't know what to think. I know that I would do anything under heaven to make you look as you did the first night I saw you." "Do I look so badly?" "You look as if you might take wings and leave us at any moment." "Then I wouldn't trouble you any more." "Then my trouble would be without remedy. Marry Mr. Hearn. Marry him tomorrow if you wish. I assure you that if you will be honestly and truly happy, I won't mope a day. I'll become the jolliest old bachelor in New York. I'll do anything within the power of man to make you your old joyous self." Now at last she turned her large, glorious eyes upon me, and their expression was sadness itself. But she only said quietly, "I believe you, Mr. Morton." "Then tell me, what can I do?" "Come to supper." And she rose and left me. I went to my old seat by the window, and the tumult in my heart was in wide contrast with the quiet summer evening. "You are mistaken, Emily Warren," I thought. "You have as much as said that I can do nothing for you. I'll break your chain. You shall not marry Gilbert Hearn if I have to protest in the very church and before the altar. You are mine by the best and divinest right, and with your truth as my ally, I'll win you yet. From this hour I dedicate myself to your happiness. Heavens, how blind I've been!" "Come, Richard," said Mrs. Yocombe, putting her head within the door. Miss Warren sat at her place silent and apathetic. She had the aspect of one who had submitted to the inevitable, but would no longer pretend she liked it. Mr. Yocombe was regarding her furtively with a clouded brow, and Ada's glances were frequent and perplexed. I felt as if walking on air, and my heart was aglow with gladness. But I knew her far too well to show what was in my mind. My purpose now was to beguile the hours till I could show her what truth really required of her. With the utmost tact that I possessed, and with all the zest that hope confirmed inspired, I sought to diffuse a general cheerfulness, and I gradually drew her into the current of our talk. After supper I told them anecdotes of public characters and eminent people, for my calling gave me a great store of this kind of information. Ere she was aware, the despondent girl was asking questions, and my answers piqued her interest still more. At last, quite late in the evening, Mr. Yocombe exclaimed, "Look here, Richard, what right has thee to keep me out of my bed long after regular hours? I'm not a night editor. Good people, you must all go to bed. I'm master of this house. Now, don't say anything, mother, to take me down." Finding myself alone with Miss Warren a moment in the hall, I asked, "Have I not done more than merely come to supper?" She turned from me instantly and went swiftly up the stairway. But the apathetic, listless look was on her face when she came down in the morning, and she appeared as if passively yielding to a dreaded necessity. I resumed my old tactics, and almost in spite of herself drew her into the genial family life. Mr. Yocombe seconded me with unflagging zeal and commendable tact, while Mrs. Yocombe surpassed us both. Ada seemed a little bewildered, as if there were something in the air which she could not understand. But we made the social sunshine of the house so natural and warm that she could not resist it. "Reuben," I said after breakfast, "Miss Warren is not well. A ride after Dapple is the best medicine I ever took. Take Miss Warren out for a swift, short drive. Don't let her say no. You have the tact to do the thing in the right way." She did decline repeatedly, but he so persisted that she at last said, "There, Reuben, I will go with you. I think thee might do that much for a friend, as thee calls me." When she returned, there was a faint color in her cheeks. The rapid drive had done her good, and I told her so as I helped her from the light wagon. "Yes, Mr. Morton, it has, and I thank you for the drive very much. Let me suggest that Reuben is much too honest for a conspirator." "Well, he was a very willing one, and I see by his face as he drives down to the barn that you have made him a happy one." "It doesn't take much to make him happy." "And would it take such an enormous amount to make you happy?" "You are much too inclined to be personal to be an editor. The world at large should hold your interest." And she went to her room. At the dinner table the genial spell worked on. She recognized it with a quiet smile, but yielded to its kindly power. At last she apparently formed the resolution to make the most of this one bright day, and she became the life of the party. "Emily," said Mrs. Yocombe as we rose from the table, "Father proposes that we all go on a family picnic to Silver Pond and take our supper there. It's only 3 miles away. Would thee feel strong enough to go?" Mrs. Yocombe spoke with the utmost simplicity and innocence, but the young girl laughed outright, then fixed a penetrating glance on Mr. Yocombe, whose florid face became much more ruddy. "Evidences of guilt clearly apparent," she said. "And Mr. Morton, too, looks very conscious. The best laid schemes of mice and men, you know the rest. Oh, yes, I'd go if I had to be carried. When webs are spun so kindly, flies ought to be caught." "What is the matter with you all?" cried Ada. "Miss Ada, if you'll find me a match for my cigar, you'll make me happy," I said hastily, availing myself of the first line of retreat open. "Is that all thee needs to make thee happy?" "Well, one thing at a time, Miss Ada, if you please." As the day grew cool, Reuben came around with the family rockaway. Mrs. Yocombe and Ada had prepared a basket as large as their own generous natures. I placed Miss Warren beside Mrs. Yocombe on the back seat, while I took my place by Ada with Zillah between us. Little Adela and Reuben had become good friends, and she insisted on sitting between him and his father. As we rolled along the quiet country roads, chatting and laughing, and occasionally singing a snatch of a song, no one would have dreamed that any shadows rested on the party, except those which slanted eastward from the trees, which often hung far over our heads. I took pains not to feign any forced gaiety, nor had I occasion to, for I was genuinely happy, happier than I had ever been before. Nothing was assured save the absolute truth of the woman that I loved, but with this ally I was confident. I was impartial in my attentions to Ada and Zillah, and so friendly to both that Ada was as pleased and happy as the child. We chaffed our country neighbors whom we met, and even chattered back at the barking squirrels that whisked before us along the fences. Mr. Yocombe seemed almost as much of a boy as Reuben, and for some reason Miss Warren always laughed most at his pleasantries. Mrs. Yocombe looked as placid and bright as Silver Pond, as it at last glistened beneath us in the breathless sunny afternoon, but like the clear surface fringed with shadows that sank far beneath the water, there were traces of many thoughts in her large blue eyes. There was a cow lying under the tree where we meant to spread our table. I pointed her out to Miss Warren with humorous dismay. "Shall we turn back?" I asked. "No," she replied, looking into my eyes gratefully. "You have become so brave that I'm not afraid to go on." I ignored her reference to that which I intended she should forget for one day, believing that if we could make her happy, she would recognize how far her golden haloed lover came short of this power. So I said banteringly, "I'll wager you my hat that you dare not get out and drive that terrific beast away." "The idea of Emily's being afraid of a cow after facing Dapple!" cried Reuben. "Well, we'll see," I said. "Stop the rockaway here." "What should I do with your hat, Mr. Morton?" "Wear it and suffer the penalty," laughed Ada. "You would surely win it," retorted the girl, a little nettled. "I'll wager you a box of candy then, or anything you please." "Let it be anything I please," she agreed, laughing. "Mr. Morton, you are not going to let me get out alone?" "Oh, no," and I sprang out to assist her down. "She wants you to be on hand in case the ferocious beast switches its tail," cried Ada. The hand she gave me trembled as I helped her out, and I saw that she regarded the placid creature with a dread that she could not disguise. Picking up a little stick, she stepped cautiously and hesitatingly toward the animal. While still ridiculously far away, she stopped, brandished her stick, and said with a quaver in her threatening tone, "Get up, I tell you." But the cow ruminated quietly, as if understanding well that there was no occasion for alarm. The girl took one or two more faltering steps and exclaimed in a voice of desperate entreaty, "Oh, please get up." We could scarcely contain ourselves for laughter. "Oh, ye gods, how beautiful she is!" I murmured. With her arm over Dapple's neck, she was a goddess. Now she's a shrinking woman. Heaven grant that it may be my lot to protect her from the real perils of life. The cow suddenly switched her tail at a teasing gadfly, and the girl precipitately sought my side. Reuben sprang out of the rockaway and lay down and rolled in his uncontrollable mirth. "Was there anything ever so ridiculous?" cried Ada, for to the country girl Miss Warren's fear was affectation. At Ada's words, Miss Warren's face suddenly became white and resolute. "You, at least, shall not despise me," she said to me in a low tone, and shutting her eyes, she made a blind rush toward the cow. I had barely time to catch her, or she would have thrown herself on the horns of the startled animal that, with tail in air, careered away among the trees. The girl was so weak and faint that I had to support her, but I could not forbear saying in a tone that she alone heard, "Do we ever despise that which we love supremely?" "Hush!" she answered sternly. Mrs. Yocombe was soon at our side with a flask of currant wine, and Ada laughed a little bitterly as she said, "It was as good as a play." Miss Warren recovered herself speedily by the aid of the generous wine, and this was the only cloud on our simple festivity. In her response to my ardent words, she seemingly had satisfied her conscience, and she acted like one bent on making the most of this one occasion of fleeting pleasure. Ada was the only one who mentioned the banker. "How Mr. Hearn would have enjoyed being here with us!" she exclaimed. Miss Warren's response was a sudden pallor and a remorseful expression, but Mr. Yocombe and I speedily created a diversion of thought. I saw, however, that Ada was watching her with a perplexed brow. The hours quickly passed, and in deepening shadows we returned homeward, Miss Warren singing some sweet old ballads to which my heart kept time. She seemed both to bring the evening to a close and sat down at the piano. Ada and I listened well content. Having put the children to bed, Mrs. Yocombe joined us, and we chatted over the pleasant trip while waiting for Mr. Yocombe and Reuben, who had not returned from the barn. At last Mrs. Yocombe said heartily, as if summing it all up, "Well, Richard, thee has given us a bright, merry afternoon." "Yes, Richard," Miss Warren began, as if her heart had spoken unawares. "I beg your pardon, Mr. Morton," and then she stopped in piteous confusion, for I had turned toward her with all my unspeakable love in my face. Ada's laugh rang out a little harshly. I hastened to the rescue of the embarrassed girl, saying, "I don't see why you should beg my pardon. We're all friends here. At least, I'm trying to be one as fast as a leopard can change his spots and the Ethiopian his skin. As for you, a tailor would say you were cut from the same cloth as Mrs. Yocombe." But for some reason she could not recover herself. She probably realized in the tumult of her feeling that she had revealed her heart too clearly, and she could not help seeing that Ada understood her. She was too confused for further pretense and too unnerved to attempt it. After a moment of pitiful hesitation, she fled with a scarlet face to her room. "Well," said Ada with a slight hysterical laugh, "I understand Emily Warren now." "Pardon me, Miss Ada, I don't think you do," I began. "If thee doesn't, thee's blind indeed." "I am blind." "Be assured I'm not any longer," and with a deep angry flush she too left us. I turned to Mrs. Yocombe, and taking both of her hands I entreated, "As you have the heart of a woman, never let Emily Warren marry that man. Help me, help us both." "My poor boy," she began, "this is a serious matter." "It is indeed," I said passionately. "It's a question of life and death to us both." "Well," she said thoughtfully, "I think time and truth will be on thy side in the end, but I would advise thee not to do or say anything rash or hasty. She is very resolute. Give her time." Would to God I had taken her advice. End of Book Second, Chapter 16. Book Second, Chapter 17 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book Second, Chapter 17. My Worst Blunder. I scarcely could foresee how we should get through the following day. I both longed for and dreaded it, feeling that though it might pass quietly enough, it would probably be decisive in its bearing on the problem of my life. Miss Warren would at last be compelled to face the truth squarely, that she had promised a man what she could not give, and to permit him to go on blindly trusting would be impossible. The moment she realized fully that she had never truly loved him, and now never could, she would give up the pretense. Then why should she not see that love, duty, and truth could go together? That she had struggled desperately to be loyal to Mr. Hearn was sadly proved by her thin face and wasted form. But with a nature like hers, when once her genuine love was evoked, the effort to repress it was as vain as seeking to curb a rising tide. I now saw, as I looked back over the past weeks, that her love had grown steadily and irresistibly till it had overwhelmed all save her will and conscience. That these stood, the two solitary landmarks of her former world. And I knew they would stand, and that my only hope was to stand with them. Her love had gone out to me as mine had to her, from a constraint that she could not resist. And this fact I hoped would reveal to her its sacred right to live. With every motive that would naturally bind her to a man who could give her so much, her heart claimed its mate in one who must daily toil long hours for subsistence. It would be like her to recognize that a love so unthrifty and unselfish must spring from the deepest truths and needs of her being rather than from any passing causes. She would come to believe, as I did, that God had created us for each other. But it seemed as if the whole world had changed and gone awry when we sat down to breakfast the next morning. Ada was polite to me, but she was cool and distant. She no longer addressed me in the friendly tongue. It was you now. I had ceased to be one of them in her estimation. Her father and mother looked grave and worried, but they were as kind and cordial to me as ever. Reuben and the little girls were evidently mystified by the great change in the social atmosphere, but were too inexperienced to understand it. I was pained by Ada's manner, but did not let it trouble me, feeling assured that as she thought the past over, she would do me justice, and that our relations would become substantially those of a brother and sister. But I was puzzled and alarmed beyond measure by Miss Warren's manner and appearance, and my feelings alternated between deepest sympathy and the strongest fear. She looked as if she had grown old in the night and was haggard from sleeplessness. Her deep eyes had sunken deeper than ever, and the lines under them were dark indeed. But her white face was full of a cold scorn, and she held herself aloof from us all. She looked again as if capable of any blind, desperate self-sacrifice. Simple, honest Mr. Yocombe was sorely perplexed, but his wife's face was grave and inscrutable. If I had only gone quietly away and left the whole problem to her, how much better it would have been. I tried to speak to Miss Warren in a pleasant, natural way. Her answers were brief and polite, but nothing more. Before the meal was over, she excused herself and returned to her room. I felt almost indignant. What had I, most of all, what had her kind, true friends, Mr. and Mrs. Yocombe, done to warrant that cold, half-scornful face? Her coming to breakfast was but a form, and she clearly wished to leave us at the earliest possible moment. Ada smiled satirically as she passed out, and the expression did not become her fair face. I strode out to the arbor in the garden and stared moodily at the floor, I know not how long, for I was greatly mystified and baffled, and my very soul was consumed with anxiety. She shall listen to reason, I muttered again and again. This question must be settled in accordance with truth, the simple, natural truth, and nothing else. She is mine, and nothing shall separate us, not even her perverse will and conscience. And so the heavy hours passed in deep perturbation. At last I heard a step, and looking through the leaves, I saw the object of my thoughts coming through the garden, reading a letter. My eyes glistened with triumph. The chance I coveted has come, I muttered, and I watched her intently. She soon crushed the letter in her hand and came swiftly toward the arbor with a face so full of deep and almost wild distress that my heart relented, and I resolved to be as gentle as before I had intended to be decisive and argumentative. I hastily changed my seat to the angle by the entrance so that I could intercept her should she try to escape the interview. She entered and, throwing herself down on the seat, buried her face in her arm. "Miss Warren," I began. She started up with a passionate gesture. "You have no right to intrude on me now," she said almost sternly. "Pardon me. Were I not here when you entered, I would still have a right to come. You are in deep distress. Why must I be inhuman any more than yourself? You have at least promised me friendship, but you treat me like an enemy." "You have been my worst enemy." "I take issue with you there at once. I've never had a thought toward you that was not most kind and loyal." "Loyal," she replied bitterly. "That word in itself is a stab." "Miss Warren," I said very gently, "you make discord in the old garden today." She dropped her letter on the ground and sank on the seat again. Such a passion of sobs shook her slight frame that I trembled with apprehension, but I kept quiet, believing that nature could care for her child better than I could, and that her outburst of feeling would bring relief. At last, as she became a little more self-controlled, I said gravely and kindly, "There must be some deep cause for this grief." "Oh, what shall I do?" she sobbed. "What shall I do? I wish the earth would open and swallow me up." "That wish is as vain as it is cruel. I wish you would tell me all and let me help you. I think I deserve it at your hands." "Well, since you know so much, you may as well know all. It doesn't matter now, since everyone will soon know. He has written that his business will take him to Europe within a month, that we must be married, that he will bring his sister here tonight to help me make arrangements. Oh, I'd rather die than ever see him again. I've wronged him so cruelly, so causelessly." In wild exultation, I snatched a pocketbook from my coat and cried, "Miss Warren, Emily, do you remember this little York and Lancaster bud that you gave me the first day we met? Do you remember my half-jesting, random words, 'To the victor belong the spoils'? See, the victor is at your feet." She sprang up and turned her back upon me. "Rise," she said, in a voice so cold and stern that, bewildered, I obeyed. She soon became as calm as before she had been passionate and unrestrained in her grief, but it was a stony quietness that chilled and disheartened me before she spoke. "It does indeed seem as if the truth between us could never be hidden," she said bitterly. "You have now very clearly shown your estimate of me. You regard me as one of those weak women of the past whom the strongest carry off. You have been the stronger in this case. Oh, you know it well. Not even in the house of God could I escape your vigilant scrutiny. You hoped and watched and waited for me to be false. Should I yield to you, you would never forget that I had been false, and in accordance with your creed, you would ever fear, that is, if your passion lasted long enough, the coming of one still stronger, to whom in the weak necessity of my nature I again would yield. Low as I have fallen, I will never accept from a man a mere passion devoid of respect and honor. I'm no longer entitled to these, therefore I'll accept nothing." She poured out these words like a torrent in spite of my gestures of passionate dissent and my efforts to be heard, but it was a cold, pitiless torrent. Excited as I was, I saw how intense was her self-loathing. I also saw despairingly that she embraced me in her scorn. "Miss Warren," I said dejectedly, "since you are so unjust to yourself, what hope have I?" "There is little enough for either of us," she continued more bitterly. "At least there is none for me. You will, no doubt, get bravely over it, as you said. Men generally do, especially when in their hearts they have no respect for the women with whom they are infatuated. Mr. Morton, the day of your coming was indeed the day of my fate. I wish you could have saved the lives of the others, but not mine. I could then have died in peace, with honor unstained. But now, what is my life but an intolerable burden of shame and self-reproach? Without cause and beyond the thought of forgiveness, I've wronged a good, honorable man who has been a kind and faithful friend for years. He is bringing his proud, aristocratic sister here tonight to learn how false and contemptible I am. The people among whom I earned my humble livelihood will soon know how unfit I am to be trusted with their daughters, that I am one who falls a spoil to the strongest. I have lost everything, chief of all, my pearl of great price, my truth. What have I left? Is there a more impoverished creature in the world? There is nothing left to me but bare existence and hateful memories. Oh, the lightning was dim compared with the vividness with which I've seen it all since that hateful moment last night, when the truth became evident even to Ada Yocum. But up to that moment, even up to this hour, I hoped you pitied me, that you were watching and waiting to help me to be true and not to be false. I did not blame you greatly for your love. My own weakness made me lenient, and at first you did not know. But since you now openly seek that which belongs to another, since you now exult that you are the stronger and that I have become your spoil, I feel, though I cannot yet see and realize the depths into which I have fallen. Even today you might have helped me as a friend and shown me how some poor shred of my truth might have been saved, but you snatched at me as if I were but the spoil of the strongest. Mr. Morton, either you or I must leave the farmhouse at once. This is the very fanaticism of truth, I cried desperately. Your mind is so utterly warped and morbid from dwelling on one side of this question that you are cruelly unjust. Would that I had been less kind and more just. I felt sorry for you from the depths of my heart. Why have you had no pity for me? You are a man of the world and know it. Why did you not show me to what this wretched weakness would lead? I thought you meant this kindness when you said you wished my brother was here. Oh, that I were sleeping beside him! I thought you meant this when you said that nothing would last, nothing could end well unless built on the truth. I hoped you were watching me with the vigilance of a man who, through loving me, was so strong and generous and honorable that he would try to save me from a weakness that I cannot understand, and which was the result of strange and unforeseen circumstances. When you were so ill, I felt as if I had dealt your death blow, and then, womanlike, I loved you. I loved you before I recognized my folly. Up to that point, we could scarcely help ourselves. For weeks, I tried to hide the truth from myself. I fought against it. I prayed against it through sleepless nights. I tried to hide the truth from you most of all. But I remember the flash of hope in your face when you first surmised my miserable secret. It hurt me cruelly. Your look should have been one of dismay and sorrow. But I know something of the weakness of the heart, and its first impulse might naturally be that of gladness, although honor must have changed it almost instantly into deep regret. Then I believed that you were sorry and that it was your wish to help me. I thought it was your purpose yesterday to show me that I could be happy, even in the path of right and duty that had become so hard. Though you spoke once as you ought not, but when I, unawares, and from the impulse of a grateful heart, spoke your name last night as that of my truest and best friend, as I thought, you turned toward me the face of a lover. And today, but it's all over. Will you go? Are Mr. and Mrs. Yocum false? I cried. No, they are too simple and true to realize the truth. Mr. Morton, I think we fully understand each other now. Since you will not go, I shall. You had better remain here and grow strong. Please let me pass. I wish you had dealt me my death blow. It were a merciful one compared with this. No, you don't understand me at all. You have portrayed me as a vile monster because you cannot keep your engagement with a man you never truly loved. You inflict the torments of hell on the man you do love and whom heaven meant you to love. Great God, you are not married to Gilbert Hearn. Have not engagements often been broken for good and sufficient reasons? Is not the truth that our hearts almost instantly claimed eternal kindred a sufficient cause? I watched and waited that I might know whether you were his or mine. I did not seek to win you from him after I knew, after I remembered, but when I knew the truth, you were mine. Before God I assert my right, and before his altar I would protest against your marriage to any other. She sank down on the arbor seat, white and faint, but made a slight repellent gesture. Yes, I'll go, I said bitterly, and such a scene as this might well cause a better man than I to go to the devil, and I strode away. But before I had taken a dozen steps, my heart relented, and I returned. Her face was again buried in her right arm, and her left hand hung by her side. I took it in both of my own as I said gently and sadly, "Emily Warren, you may scorn me, you may refuse ever to see my face again, but I have dedicated my life to your happiness, and I shall keep my vow. It may be of no use, but God looketh at the intent of the heart. Heathen though I am, I cannot believe He will let the June day when we first met prove so fatal to us both. The God of whom Mrs. Yocombe told us wants no harsh, useless self-sacrifice. You are not false and never have been. Mrs. Yocombe is not more true. I respect and honor you as I do my mother's memory, though my respect now counts so little to you. I never meant to wrong or pain you. I meant your happiness first and always. If you care to know, my future life shall show whether I am a gentleman or a villain. May God show you how cruelly unjust you are to yourself. I shall attempt no further self-defense. Goodbye." She trembled, but she only whispered, "Goodbye. Go and forget." "When I forget you, when I fail in loving loyalty to you, may God forget me," I replied, and I hastened from the garden with as much sorrow and bitterness in my heart as the first man could have felt when the angel drove him from Eden. Alas, I was going out alone into a world that had become thorny indeed. As I approached the house, Mrs. Yocombe happened to come out on the piazza. I took her hand and drew her toward the garden gate. She saw that I was almost speechless from trouble, and with her native wisdom divined it all. "I did not take your advice," I groaned. "Accursed fool that I was! But no matter about me. Save Emily from herself. As you believe in God's mercy, watch over her as you watched over me. Show her the wrong of wrecking both of our lives. She's in the arbor there. Go and stay with her till I am gone. You are my only hope. God bless you for all your kindness to me. Please write. I shall be in torment till I hear from you. Goodbye." I watched her till I saw her enter the arbor, then hastened to the barn where Reuben was giving the horses their noonday feeding. "Reuben," I said quietly, "I'm compelled to go to New York at once. We can catch the afternoon train if you are prompt." "Not a word, old fellow. I've no time now to explain. I must go, and I'll walk if you won't take me." And I hastened to the house and packed for departure with reckless haste. At the foot of the moody stairway, I met Ada. "Are you going away?" she tried to say distantly, with face averted. "Yes, Miss Ada, and I fear you are glad." "No," she said brokenly, and turning, she gave me her hand. "I can't keep this up any longer, Richard. Since we first met, I've been very foolish, very weak, and thee has been a true gentleman toward me." "I wish I might be a true brother. God knows I feel like one." Thee saved my life, Richard. I was wicked to forget that for a moment. Will thee forgive me?" "I'll forgive you only as you will let me become the most devoted brother a girl ever had, for I love and respect you, Ada, very, very much." Tears rushed into the warm-hearted girl's eyes. She put her arms around my neck and kissed me. "Let this seal that agreement," she said, "and I'll be thy sister in heart as well as in name." "How kind and good you are, Ada," I faltered. "You are growing like your mother now. When you come to New York, you will see how I keep my word." And I hastened away. Mr. Yocombe intercepted me in the path. "How's this? How's this?" he cried. "I must go to New York at once," I said. "Mrs. Yocombe will explain all. I have a message for Mr. Hearn. Please say that I will meet him at any time and will give any explanations to which he has a right. Goodbye. I won't try to thank you for your kindness, which I shall value more and more every coming day." For a long time we rode in silence, Reuben looking as grim and lowering as his round, ruddy face permitted. At last he broke out, "Now, I say, blast Emily Warren's grandfather." "No, Reuben, my boy," I replied, putting my arm around him. "With all his millions, I'm heartily sorry for Mr. Hearn." End of Book Second, Chapter 17. Book Second, Chapter 18 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book 2nd, Chapter 18. Mrs. Yoakum's Letters. I will not weary the reader with my experiences after arriving at New York. I could not have felt worse had I been driven into the dismal swamp. My apartments were dusty and stifling, and as cheerless as my feelings. My editorial chief welcomed me cordially and talked business. After you had gone, he was kind enough to say, "We learned your value. Night work is too wearing for you, so please take that office next to mine. I feel a little like breaking down myself and don't intend to wait until I do as you did. I shall be off a great deal the rest of the summer, and you'll have to manage things." "Pile on work," I said. "I'm greedy for it." "Yes," he replied, laughing. "I appreciate that rare trait of yours, but I shall regard you as insubordinate if you don't take proper rest. Give us your brains, Morton, and leave hack work to others. That's where you blundered before." Within an hour I was caught in the whirl of the great complicated world, and, as I said to Mr. Yoakum, I had indeed no time to mope. Thank God for work. It's the best antidote this world has for trouble. But when night came, my brain was weary and my heart heavy as lead. It seemed as if the farmhouse was in another world, so diverse was everything there from my present life. I had given my uptown address to Mrs. Yoakum and went home, if I may apply that term to my dismal boarding place, Tuesday night, feeling assured that there must be a letter. Good Mrs. Yoakum had not failed me, for on my table lay a bulky envelope addressed in a quaint but clear hand. I was glad no one saw how my hand trembled as I opened her missive and read: "My dear Richard, I know how anxious thee is for tidings from us all, and especially from one toward whom thy heart is very tender. I will take up the sad story where thee left it. Having all the facts, thee can draw thy own conclusions. I found Emily in almost a fainting condition, and I just took her in my arms and let her cry like a child until tears brought relief. It was no time for words. Then I brought her into the house and gave her something that made her sleep in spite of herself. She awoke about an hour before Gilbert Hearn's arrival, and her nervous trepidation at the thought of meeting him was so great that I resolved she should not see him, at least not that night, and I told her so. This gave her great relief, though she said it was cowardly in her to feel so, but in truth she was too ill to see him. Her struggle had been too long and severe, and her nervous system was utterly prostrated. And the doctor is very discreet. I told him that he must manage so that Emily need not see the one she so feared to meet again, and hinted plainly why, though making no reference to thee, of course. The doctor acted as I wished, not because I wished it, but on professional grounds. "Miss Warren's future health depends on absolute rest and quiet," he said to her affianced. "I not only advise that you do not see her, but I forbid it," for he was terribly excited. So was his sister, Charlotte Bradford, and it was as much as we could do to keep them from going to her room. If they had, I believe the excitement would have destroyed either her life or reason. Gilbert Hearn plainly intimated that something was wrong. "Very well, then," I said, "bring thy own family physician and let him consult with Dr. Bates." And this he angrily said he would do on the morrow. The very fact that they were in the house made the poor girl almost wild, but I stayed with her all night, and she just lay in my arms like a frightened child, and my heart yearned over her as if she were my own daughter. She did not speak of thee, but I heard her murmur once, "I was cruel, I was unjust to him." In the morning she was more composed, and I made her take strong nourishment, I can tell thee. Thee remembers how I used to dose thee in spite of thyself. Well, in the morning Emily seemed to be thinking deeply, and by she said, "Mrs. Yoakum, I want this affair settled at once. I want you to sit by me while I write to him and advise me." I felt she was right. Her words were about as follows. I asked her if I could tell thee what she wrote. She hesitated a little, and a faint color came into her pale face. "Yes," she said at last. "Let him know the whole truth. Since so much has occurred between us, I want him to know everything. He then may judge me as he thinks best. I have a horror of any more misunderstanding." You can never know, Mr. Hearn, she wrote, the pain and sorrow with which I address you these words. Still less can you know my shame and remorse, but you are an honorable man and have a right to know the truth. My best hope is that when you know how unworthy I am of your regard, your regret will be slight. I recall all your kindness to me, and my heart is tortured as I now think of the requital I am making. Still, justice to myself requires that I tell you that I mistook my gratitude and esteem, my respect and genuine regard, for a deeper emotion. You will remember, however, that I long hesitated, feeling instinctively that I could not give you what you had a right to expect. Last spring you pressed me for a definite answer. I said I would come to this quiet place and think it all over, and if I did not write you to the contrary within a few days, you might believe that I had yielded to your wishes. I found myself more worn and weary from my toilsome life than I imagined. I was lonely. I dreaded my single-handed struggle with the world, and my heart overflowed with gratitude toward you. It still does, for your kindness and for all that you promised to do for me. I had not the will nor the disposition to say no or to put you off any longer. Still, I had misgiving. I feared that I did not feel as I ought. When I received your kind letter accepting my silence as consent, I felt bound by it. I was bound by it. I have no defense to make. I can only state the miserable truth. I cannot love you as a wife ought, and I know now that I never can. I've tried. God knows I've tried. I'm worn out with the struggle. I fear I am very ill. I wish I were dead and at rest. I cannot ask you to think mercifully of me. I cannot think mercifully of myself. To meet again would be only useless suffering. I am not equal to it. My one effort now is to gain sufficient strength to go to some distant relatives in the West. Please forgive me. In sorrow and bitter regret, Emily Warren. I started up and paced the room distractedly. The generous girl, I exclaimed. She lays not a particle of blame on me. But by Jove, I'd like to take all the blame and have it out with him here and now. Blame? What blame is there? The poor child. Why can't she see that she is white as snow? Again, I eagerly turned to Mrs. Yoakum's words. Emily seemed almost overwhelmed at the thought of his reading this letter. She is so generous, so sensitive, that she saw only his side of the case, and scarcely made any allowance for herself. I was a little decided and plain-spoken with her, and it did her good. At last I said to her, I am not weak-minded if I am simple and plain. Because I live in the country is no reason why I do not know what is right and just. Thee has no cause to blame thyself so bitterly. Does Mr. Yoakum feel and think as you do? She asked. Of course he does, I replied. She put her hands to her head and said pitifully, Perhaps I am too distracted to see things clearly. I sometimes fear I may lose my reason. Well, Emily, I said, thee has done right. Thee cannot help feeling as thee does. And to go on now would be as great a wrong to Gilbert Hearn as to thyself. Thee has done just as I would advise my own daughter to do. Leave all with me. Thee need not see him again. And I left her quite heartened up. Oh, but you are a gem of a woman, I cried. A few more like you would bring the millennium. Gilbert Hearn was dreadfully taken aback by the letter, but I must do him the justice to say that he was much touched by it too, for he called me again into the parlor, and I saw that he was much moved. He had given his sister the letter to read, and she muttered, poor thing, as she finished it. He fixed his eyes sternly on me and said, Mr. Morton is at the bottom of this thing. I returned his gaze very quietly and asked, What am I to infer by this expression of thy opinion to me? His sister was as quick as a flash, and she said plainly, Gilbert, these people were not two little children in Mrs. Yoakum's care. Thee is right, I said. I have not controlled their actions any more than I have those of thy brother. Richard Morton is absent, however, and were we not under peculiar obligations to him, I would still be bound to speak for him, since he is not here to speak for himself. I have never seen Richard Morton do anything unbecoming a gentleman. Has thee, Gilbert Hearn? If so, I think thee had better see him, for he is not one to deny thee any explanation to which thee has a right. Why did he go to the city so suddenly? He asked angrily. I will give thee his address, I said coldly. Gilbert expostulated his sister. We have no right to cross-question Mrs. Yocombe. Since thee is so considerate, I said to her, I will add that Richard Morton intended to return on second day at the latest, and he chose to go today. His action enables me to give thee a room to thyself. Gilbert, said the lady, I do not see that we have any reason to regret his absence. As Mrs. Yocombe says, you can see him in New York, but unless you have well-founded and specific charges to make, I think it would compromise your dignity to see him. Editors are ugly customers to stir up, unless there is a good cause. I know one, I growled, that would be a particularly ugly customer just now. In Emily Warren's case, I said, it is different. Mrs. Yocombe continued. She is a motherless girl and has appealed to me for advice and sympathy. In her honest struggle to be loyal to thee, she has worn herself almost to a shadow. And I have grave fears for her reason and her life, so great is her prostration. She has for thee, Gilbert Hearn, the sincerest respect and esteem, and the feeling that she has wronged thee, even though she cannot help it, seems almost to crush her. Gilbert, said his sister warmly, you cannot blame her, and you certainly ought to respect her. If she were not an honest-hearted girl, she would never have renounced you with your great wealth. He sank into a chair and looked very white. It's a terrible blow, he said. It's the first severe reverse I've ever had. I know from your character that you will meet it like a man and a gentleman. Certainly, he said with a deep breath. I cannot do otherwise. Then I rose and bowed, saying, you will both excuse me if I am with my charge much of the time. Ada will attend to your wants, and I hope you will feel at home so long as it shall please you to stay. By Jove, but her tact was wonderful. Not a diplomat in Europe could have done better. The innocent-looking Quakeress was a match for them both. Then I went back to Emily, Mrs. Yocombe wrote, and I found her in a pitiable state of excitement. When I opened the door, she started up apprehensively, as if she feared that the man with whom she had broken would burst in upon her with bitter reproaches. I told her everything, for even I cannot deceive her, she is so quick. Her mind was wonderfully lightened, and I soon made her sleep again. She awoke in the evening much quieter, but she cried a good deal in the night, and I surmise she was thinking of thee more than of herself or of him. I wish thee had waited until all this was over, but I think all will come out right. Oh, the unutterable fool that I was, I groaned. I'm the champion blunderer of the world. Well, Richard, this is the longest letter I ever wrote, and I must bring it to a close, for my patient needs me. I will write soon again and tell thee everything. Good night. Second day P.S. I left my letter open to add a postscript. Gilbert Hearn and his sister left this morning. The former at last seemed quite calm and resigned, and was very polite. His sister was too. She amused me not a little. I do not think that her heart was greatly set on the match, and she was not so troubled but that she could take an interest in our quiet, homely ways. I think we seemed to her what you city people call bric-a-brac, but she was too much of a lady to let her curiosity become offensive. She took a great fancy to Ada, especially as she saw that Adela was very fond of her, and she persuaded her brother to leave the child here in our care, saying that she was improving wonderfully. He did not seem at all adverse to the plan. Ada is behaving very nicely, if I do say it, and showed a great deal of quiet, gentle dignity. She and Charlotte Bradford had a long chat in the evening about Adela. Ada says, send Richard my love, and if I put in all the messages from Father, Reuben, and Zillah, they would fill another sheet. I asked Emily if she had any message for thee. She buried her face in the pillow and murmured, not now, not yet. But after a moment she turned toward me, looking white and resolute. Tell him, she said, to forgive me and forget. Be patient, Richard. Wait. Thine affectionately, Ruth Yocombe. Forget, I shouted. Yes, when I am annihilated, and I paced my room for hours. At last, exhausted, I sought such rest as I could obtain, but my last thought was, God bless Ruth Yocombe. I could kiss the ground she had trodden. The next morning I settled down to my task of waiting and working, resolving that there must be no more nights like the last, in which I had wasted a vast amount of vital force. I wrote to Mrs. Yocombe and thanked her from a full heart. I sent messages to all the family and said, "Tell Ada I shall keep her love warm in my heart and that I send her twice as much of mine in return. Like all brothers, I shall take liberties and will subscribe in her behalf for the two best magazines in the city. Give Miss Warren this simple message. The words I last spoke to her shall ever be true." I also told Mrs. Yocombe of my promotion and that I was no longer a night owl. Toward the end of the week came another bulky letter, which I devoured, letting my dinner grow cold. "Our life at the farmhouse has become very quiet," she wrote. "Emily improves slowly, for her nervous system has received a severe strain." I told her that Thee had sent messages to all the family and asked if she did not expect one. "I've no right to any. There's no occasion for any," she faltered, but her eyes were very wistful and entreating. "Well," I said, "I must clear my conscience, and since he sent thee one, I must give it. He writes, 'Say to Miss Warren in reply that the last words I spoke to her shall ever be true.'" "I suppose thee know what he means," I said, smiling. "I don't." She buried her face in the pillow again, but I think thy message did her good, for she soon fell asleep and looked more peaceful than at any time yet. At last there came a letter saying, "Emily has left us and gone to a cousin, a Mrs. Vining, who resides at Columbus, Ohio. She is much better, but very quiet, very different from her old self. Father put her on the train, and she will have to change cars only once. Emily," I said to her, "thee cannot go away without one word for Richard." She was deeply moved, but her resolute will gained the mastery. "I am trying to act for the best," she said. "He has appealed to the future. The future must prove us both, for there must be no more mistakes." "Does thee doubt thyself, Emily?" "I have reason to doubt myself, Mrs. Yocombe," she replied. "But what does thy heart tell thee?" A deep, solemn look came into her eyes, and after a few moments she said, "Pardon me, my dear friend, if I do not answer you fully. Indeed, I would scarcely know how to answer you. I have entered on an experience that is new and strange to me. I am troubled and frightened at myself. I want to go away among strangers where I can think and grow calm. I want to be alone with my God. I should always be weak and vacillating here. Moreover, Mr. Morton has formed an impression of me of which perhaps I cannot complain. This impression may grow stronger in his mind. It has all been too sudden. His experiences have been too intermingled with storm, delirium, and passion. He has not had time to think any more than I have. In the larger sphere of work to which you say he has been promoted, he may find new interests that will be absorbing. After a quiet and distant retrospect, he may thank me for the course I am taking." "Emily," I exclaimed, "for so tender-hearted a girl, thee is very strong." "No," she replied, "but because I have learned my weakness, I am going away from temptation." I then asked, "Is thee willing I should tell Richard what thee has said?" After thinking for some time, she answered, "Yes, let everything be based on the simple truth, but tell him he must respect my action. He must leave me to myself." The afternoon before she left us, Ada and Reuben went over to the village and got some beautiful rosebuds, and Ada brought them up after tea. Emily was much touched and kissed her again and again. Then she threw herself into my arms and cried for nearly an hour, but she went away bravely. I never can think of it with dry eyes. Zillah was heartbroken, and Reuben clung to her in a way that surprised me. He has been very remorseful that he treated her badly at one time. Ada and I were mopping our eyes, and Father kept blowing his nose like a trumpet. She gave way a little at the last moment, for Reuben ran down to the barn and brought out Dapple that she might say good-bye to him, and she put her arms around the pretty creature's neck and sobbed for a moment or two. I never saw a horse act so. He followed her right up to the Rockaway steps. At last she said, "Come, let us go, quick." I shall never forget the scene, and I think that she repressed so much feeling that we had to express it for her. She kissed little Adela tenderly, and the child was crying too. It seemed as if we couldn't go on and take up our everyday life again. I wouldn't have believed that one who was a stranger but a short time ago could have gotten such a hold upon our hearts. But as I think it all over, I do not wonder. Dear little Zillah reminds me of what I owe to her. She is very womanly, but she is singularly strong. As she was driven away, she looked up at thy window, so thee may guess that thee was the last one in her thoughts. Wait and be patient. Do just as she says. I am glad that my editorial chief did not see me as I read this letter, for I fear I should have been deposed at once. Its influence on me, however, was very satisfactory to him, for if ever a man was put on his mettle, I felt that I had been. Very well, Emily Warren, I said. We have both appealed to the future. Let it judge us. I worked and tried to live as if the girl's clear dark eyes were always on me, and her last lingering glance at the window from which I had watched her go to meet the lover that, for my sake, she could not marry, was a ray of steady sunshine. She did not realize how unconsciously she had given me hope. A few days later, I looked carefully over our subscription list. Her paper had been stopped, and I felt this keenly. But as I was staring blankly at the obliterated name, a happy thought occurred to me, and I turned to the letter V. With a gleam of deep satisfaction in my eyes, I found the address, Mrs. Adelaide Vining, Columbus, Ohio. Now, through the editorial page, I can write to her daily, I thought. Late in September, my chief said to me, "Look here, Morton, you are pitching into every dragon in the country. I don't mind fighting 3 or 4 evils or abuses at a time, but this general onslaught is raising a breeze. With your permission, I don't care if it becomes a gale, as long as we are well ballasted with facts. Well, to go back to my first figure, be sure you are well armed before you attack. Some of the beasts are old and tough and have awful stings in their tails. The people seem to like it, though, from the way subscriptions are coming in. But I wrote chiefly for one reader. He would have opened his eyes if I had told him that a young music teacher in Columbus, Ohio, had a large share in conducting the journal. Over the desk in my rooms I had had framed in illuminated text the words she had spoken to me on the most memorable day of my life. The editor has exceptional opportunities and might be the knight errant of our age. If in earnest and on the right side, he can forge a weapon out of public opinion that few evils could resist. He is in just the position to discover these dragons and drive them from their hiding places. The spirit that breathed in these words I tried to make mine, for I wished to feel and think as she did. While I maintained my individuality of thought, I never touched a question but that I first looked at it from her standpoint. I labored for weeks over an editorial entitled Truth versus Conscience and sent it like an arrow into the west. End of Book 2nd, Chapter 18. Book 2nd, Chapter 19 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book 2nd, Chapter 19 Ada. I heard often from the farmhouse and learned that Mr. Hearn had gone to Europe almost immediately, but that he had returned in the latter part of September and had spent a week with his little girl, Mrs. Bradford, his sister, accompanying him. They seem to think Adela is doing so well, Mrs. Yocombe wrote, that they have decided to leave her here through October. Ada spends part of every forenoon teaching the little girls. In the latter part of November, I received a letter that made my heart beat thick and fast. We expect thee to eat thy Thanksgiving dinner with us, and we expect also a friend from the West. I think she will treat thee civilly. At any rate, we have a right to invite whom we please. We drew up a petition to Emily and all signed it. Father added a direful postscript. He said, "If thee won't come quietly, I will go after thee. Thee thinks I am a man of peace, but there will be commotion and violence in Ohio if thee doesn't come. So strong-willed as thee is, thee has got to yield for once." She wrote Father the funniest letter in reply, in which she agreed, for the credit of the Society of Friends, not to provoke him to extremities. She doesn't know thee is coming, but I think she knows me well enough to be sure that thee would be invited. Emily writes that she will not return to New York to live, since she can obtain more scholars than she needs at Columbus. Mrs. Yocombe also added that Ada had left home that day for an extended visit in the city, and she gave me her address. I had written to Ada more than once and had made out a program of what we should do when she came to town. Quite early in the evening I started out to call upon her, but as I drew near the house I saw that a handsome coupe stood before the door, drawn by two horses, and that the coachman was in livery. My steps were speedily arrested, for the door of the dwelling was opened and Mr. Hearn came out, accompanied by Ada. They entered the coupe and were driven rapidly toward Fifth Avenue. I gave a long, low whistle and took 2 or 3 turns around the block, muttering, "Gilbert Hearn, but you are shrewd. If you can't have the best thing in the world, you'll have the next best. Come to think of it, she is best for you. If this comes about for Ada, I could throw my hat over yonder steeple." I went back to the house, proposing to leave my card and thus show Ada that I was not inattentive. The interior of the dwelling, like its exterior, was plain, but very substantial and elegant. The servant handed my card to a lady passing through the hall. "Oh, thee is Richard Morton," she said. "Cousin Ruth and Ada have told us all about thee. Please come in, for I want to make thy acquaintance. Ada will be sorry to miss thee. She has gone out for the evening." "If she will permit me," I said, "I will call to morrow on my way downtown, for I wish to see her very much." "Do so by all means. Come whenever thee can and informally. Thee'll always find a welcome here." Before I was aware I had spent an hour in pleasant chat, for with the Yocombes as mutual friends we had common interests. Mrs. Winfield, my hostess, had all the elegance of Mrs. Bradford, but there was also a simple, friendly heartiness in her manner that stamped every word she spoke with sincerity. I was greatly pleased and felt that the wealthy banker and his sister could find no fault with Ada's connections. She greeted me the next morning like the sister she had become in very truth. "Oh, Richard," she exclaimed, "I'm so glad to see thee. Why, thee's so improved I'd hardly know thee. Seems to me thee's grown taller and larger every way." "I fear I looked rather small sometimes in the country." "No, Richard, thee never looked small to me, but when I think what I was when thee found me, I don't wonder thee went up to thy room in disgust. I've thought a great deal since that day, and I've read some too." "If you knew how proud of you I am now, it would turn your head." "Perhaps it isn't very strong. So thee's going to eat thy Thanksgiving dinner at home. I shall be well out of the way." "You will never be in my way, but perhaps I might have been in somebody's way had I come earlier last night." "I thought thee was blind," she said, an exquisite color coming into her beautiful face. "Never to your interests, Ada. Count on me to the last drop." "Oh, Richard, thee has been so kind and helpful to me. Thee'll never know all that's in my heart. When I think of what I was when I first knew thee, I wonder at it all." "Ada," I said, taking her hand, "you have become a genuine woman. The expression of your face has changed, and it has become a fine example of the truth that even beauty follows the law of living growth from within outward. Higher thoughts, noble principle, and unselfishness are making their impress. After our long separation, I see the change distinctly, and I feel it still more. You have won my honest respect, Ada. I predict for you a happy life, and, what is more, you will make others happy. People will be the better for being with you." "Well, Richard, now that we are brother and sister, I don't mind telling thee that it was thee who woke me up. I was a fool before thee came." "But the true sweet woman was in your nature ready to be awakened. Other causes would soon have produced the same effect." "Possibly, but I don't know anything about other causes. I do know thee, and I trust thee with my whole heart. And I'm going to talk frankly with thee because I want to ask thy advice. Thee knows how near to death I came. I've thought a great deal about it. Having come so near losing life, I began to think of what life meant, what it was, and I was soon made to see how petty and silly my former life had been. My heart just overflowed with gratitude toward thee. When thee was so ill, I would often lie awake whole nights thinking and trembling lest thee should die. I felt so strangely, so weak and helpless, that I stretched out my hands to thee, and thy strong hands caught and sustained me through that time when I was neither woman nor child. Thee never humiliated me by even a glance. Thee treated me with a respect that I did not deserve, but which I want to deserve. I am not strong like Emily Warren, but I am trying to do right. Thee changed a blind impulse into an abiding trust and sisterly affection. Thee may think I'm giving thee a strange proof of my trust. I am going to tell thee something that I've not told anyone yet. Last evening Gilbert Hearn took me to see his sister, Mrs. Bradford, and I spent the evening with them and little Adela. Coming home, he asked me to be his wife. I was not so very greatly surprised, for he spent every first day in October at our house while Adela was with us, and he was very attentive to me. Father and mother don't like it very much, but I think they are a little prejudiced against him on thy account. I believe thee will tell me the truth about him. Ada, dear, you have honored me greatly. I will advise you just as I would my own sister. What did you answer him last evening? I told him that I was a simple country girl and not suited to be his wife. He then said that he had a right to his own views about that. He said he wanted a genuine wife, one that would love him and his little girl, and not a society woman who would marry him for his money. That is exceedingly sensible. Yes, he said he wanted a home and that he was fond of quiet home life, that I came of a quiet, sincere people, and that he had seen enough of me to know that he could trust me. He said also that I could be both a mother and a companion to Adela, and that the child needed just such a disposition as I had. I laughed as I said, Mr. Hearn is sagacity itself. Even Solomon could not act more wisely than he is seeking to act. But what does your heart say to all this, Ada? Her color deepened and she averted her face. Thee will think I'm dreadfully matter-of-fact, Richard, but I think that perhaps we are suited to each other. I've thought about it a great deal. As I said before, my head isn't very strong. I couldn't understand half the things he thinks and writes about. I've seen that clearly. He wouldn't expect a wife to understand his business, and he says he wants to forget all about it when he comes home. He says he likes a place full of beauty, repose, and genial light. He likes quiet dinner parties made up of his business friends and not literary people like thee. We haven't got great inquiring minds like thee and Emily Warren. You are making fun of me now, Ada. I fear Miss Warren has thrown me over in disgust. Nonsense, Richard. She loves thy little finger more than I am capable of loving any man. She is strong and intense, and she could go with thee in thought wherever thee pleases. I'm only Ada. Yes, you are Ada, and the man who has the reputation of having the best of everything in the city wants you badly, and with good reason. But I want to know what you want. I want to know what thee thinks of it. I want thee to tell me about him. Does thee know anything against him? No, Ada, even when I feared he would disappoint my dearest hope, I told your mother that he was an honorable man. He is exceedingly shrewd in business, but I never heard of his doing anything that was not square. I think he would make you a very kind, considerate husband, and, as he says, you could do so much for his little girl. But, rich as he is, Ada, he is not rich enough for you unless you can truly love him. I think I can love him in my quiet way. I think I would be happy in the life I would lead with him. I'm fond of housekeeping, and very fond of pretty things and of the city, as thee knows. Then I could do so much for them all at home. Father and mother are growing old. Father lent some money years ago and lost it, and he and mother have to work too hard. I could do so much for them and for Zillah, and that would make me happy, but I am so simple and I know so little that I fear I can't satisfy him. I have no fear on that score. What I am anxious about is, will he satisfy you? You can't realize how bent upon your happiness I am. I thank thee, Richard. I was not wrong in coming to thee. Well, I told him that I wanted to think it all over, and I asked him to do the same. He said he had fully made up his mind and that his sister heartily approved of his course and had advised it. He said that he would wait for me as long as I pleased. Now, if thee thinks it's best, thy words would have much influence with father and mother. I raised her hand to my lips and said feelingly, Ada, I am very grateful for this confidence. I feel more honored that you should have come to me than if I had been made governor. In view of what you have said, I do think it's best. Mr. Hearn will always be kind and considerate, and you will grow rapidly into those qualities that will adorn your high social position. Do not undervalue yourself. Gilbert Hearn may well thank God for you every day of his life. I went down to the office in a mood to write an interminable Thanksgiving editorial, for it seemed as if the clouds were all breaking away. End of Book Second, Chapter 19. Book Second, Chapter 20 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book Second, Chapter 20. Thanksgiving Day. On the day before Thanksgiving, one of my associates clapped me on the shoulder and said, laughing, "Morton, what's the matter? You are as nervous as a girl on her wedding day. I've spoken to you twice and you've not answered. Has one of the dragons got the best of you?" I woke up and said quietly, "It isn't a dragon this time." Oh, how vividly that evening comes back to me. As I walked swiftly uptown, it would have been torture to have ridden in a lumbering stage or crawling streetcar. I scarcely knew what I thrust into my traveling bag. I had no idea what I ate for dinner and only remembered that I scalded myself slightly with hot coffee. Calling a coupe, I dashed off to a late train that passed through the village nearest to the farmhouse. It had been arranged that I should come the following morning and that Reuben should meet me, but I proposed to give them a surprise. I could not wait one moment longer than I must. I had horrible dreams in the stuffy little room at the village inn, but consoled myself with the thought that dreams go by contraries. After a breakfast on which mine host cleared 200%, I secured a light wagon and driver and started for the world's one Mecca for me. My mind was in a tumult of mingled hope and fear, and I experienced all a young soldier's trepidation when going into his first battle. If she had not come, if she would not listen to me, the cold perspiration would start out on my brow at the very thought. What a mockery Thanksgiving Day would ever become if my hopes were disappointed. Even now I cannot recall that interminable ride without a faint awakening of the old unrest. Then within half a mile of the house I dismissed my driver and started on at a tremendous pace, but my steps grew slower and slower, and when the turn of the road revealed the dear old place just before me, I leaned against a wall, faint and trembling. I marked the spot on which I had stood when the fiery bolt descended, and some white shingles indicated the place on the mossy roof where it had burned its way into the home that even then enshrined my dearest treasures. I saw the window at which Emily Warren had directed the glance that had sustained my hope for months. I looked wistfully at the leafless, flowerless garden where I had first recognized my Eve. Will her manner be like the present aspect of that garden? I groaned. I saw the arbor in which I made my wretched blunder. I had about broken myself of profanity, but an ugly expression slipped out. I hope the good angel makes allowances for human nature. Recalling the vow I had made in that arbor, I snatched up my valise and did not stop till I had mounted the piazza. Further suspense was unendurable. My approach had been unnoted, nor had I seen any of the family. Noiselessly as possible, I opened the door and stood within the hallway. I heard Mrs. Yoakum's voice in the kitchen. Reuben was whistling upstairs and Zillah singing her doll to sleep in the dining room. I took these sounds to be good omens. If she had not come, there would not have been such cheerfulness. With silent tread, I stole to the parlor door. At my old seat by the window was Emily Warren, writing on a portfolio in her lap. For a second a blur came over my vision, and then I devoured her with my eyes as the famishing would look at food. Had she changed? Yes, but only to become tenfold more beautiful, for her face now had that indescribable charm which suffering nobly endured imparts. I could have knelt to her like a Catholic to his patron saint. She felt my presence, for she looked up quickly. The portfolio dropped from her lap. She was greatly startled and instinctively put her hand to her side. Still, I thought I saw welcome dawning in her eyes, but at this moment Zillah sprang into my arms and half smothered me with kisses. Her cries of delight brought Reuben tearing down the stairs, and Mrs. Yoakum, hastening from the kitchen, left the mark of her flowery arm on the collar of my coat as she gave me a motherly salute. Their welcome was so warm, spontaneous, and real that tears came into my eyes, for I felt that I was no longer a lonely man without kindred. But after a moment or two, I broke away from them and turned to Miss Warren, for all my Thanksgiving Day depended upon her. She had become very pale, but her eyes were glistening at the honest feeling she had witnessed. I held out my hand and asked in a low voice, "May I stay?" "I could not send you away from such friends, Mr. Morton," she said gently, "even had I the right." And she held out her hand. I think I heard it, for I grasped it as if I were drowning. Reuben had raced down to the barn to call his father, who now followed him back at a pace that scarcely became his age and Quaker tenets. "Richard," he called as soon as he saw me, "welcome home. Thee's been a long time coming, and yet thee's stolen a march on us all. Reuben was just going for thee. How did thee get here? There's no train so early." "Oh, I came last night. A ship's cable couldn't hold me the moment I could get away." "Mother, I think that's quite a compliment to us old people," he began. "Has thee seen Ada?" "Yes, indeed, and she sent more love than I could carry to you all. She looked just lovely, and I nearly forgot to go downtown that morning." Miss Warren was about to leave the room, but the old gentleman caught her hand and asked, "Where is thee going, Emily?" "Pardon me, I thought you all would have much to say to Mr. Morton." "So we have, to be sure. We won't get half through today, but that's no reason for thy leaving us. We are all one family under this roof, thank God, and I'm going to thank him today in good old style and no make-believe." And he kept her hand as she sat down by him. "If you knew how homesick I've often been, you would realize how much good your words do me," she replied gratefully. "So thee's been homesick, has thee? Well, thee didn't let us know." "What good would it have done? I couldn't come before." "Well, I am kind of glad thee was homesick. The missing wasn't all on our side. Why, Richard, thee never saw such a disconsolate household as we were after Emily left. I even lost my appetite, didn't I, Mother? And that's more than I've done for any lady since Ebenezer Holcomb cut me out of thy company at a picnic. Let me see. How many years ago is it, Mother?" "Thee doesn't think I remember such foolishness, I hope," said the old lady, but with a rising color almost as pretty as the blush I had seen so recently on Ada's face. Mr. Yocombe leaned back and laughed. "See Mother blush," he cried. "Poor Ebenezer! Thee'll want more than thy light nonsense for thy dinner by and by, so I must go back to the kitchen." As she turned away, she gave a sweet suggestion of the blushing girl for whom Ebenezer had sighed in vain, and I said emphatically, "Yes, indeed, Mr. Yocombe, you may well say poor Ebenezer. How in the world did he ever survive it?" "Thee's very sympathetic, Richard." Miss Warren looked at him threateningly. I tried to laugh it off and said, "Even if he had a millstone for a heart, it must have broken at such a loss." "Oh, don't thee worry. He's a hale and hearty grandfather today." Miss Warren broke into a laugh that set all my nerves tingling. "Yes," she cried, "I thought it would end in that way." "Why, Emily, bless thee," said Mrs. Yocombe, running in. "I haven't heard thee laugh so since thee came." "She's at her old tricks," said her husband, laughing at Richard and me. I found her merriment anything but reassuring, and I muttered under my breath, "Perdition on Ebenezer and his speedy comfort. I hope she don't class me with him." Very soon Mrs. Yocombe appeared again and said, "Father, thee must take them all out to drive. I can't do anything straight while I hear you all talking and laughing, for my thoughts are with you. I've put salt into one pie already. A Thanksgiving dinner requires one's whole mind." "Bustle, bustle, all get ready. Mother's mistress of this house on Thanksgiving Day, if at no other time. We're commanded to obey the powers that be, and if the woman who can get up such a dinner as Mother can isn't a power, I'd like to know where we'll find one. I'm very meek and respectful on Thanksgiving morning. Get on thy wraps, Emily. No mutiny before dinner." She seemed very ready to go, for I think she dreaded being left alone with me. I too was glad to gain time, for I was strangely unnerved and apprehensive. She avoided meeting my eyes and was inscrutable. In a few moments we were in the family rockaway, bowling over the country at a grand pace. "Mother's shrewd," said Mr. Yocombe. "She knew that a ride like this in the frosty air would give us an appetite for any kind of a dinner, but it will make hers taste like the Feast of Tabernacles. Let 'em go, Reuben, let 'em go." "Do you call this a Quaker pace?" asked Miss Warren, who sat with Zillah on the back seat. "Yes, I'm acting just as I feel moved. Thee's much too slow for a friend, Emily. Now I'll wager thee a plum that Richard likes it, doesn't thee, Richard?" "Suppose a wheel should come off," I suggested. "I'm awfully nervous today. I was sure the train would break down or run off the track last night. Then I had horrible dreams at the hotel." "Why, Mr. Morton," Miss Warren exclaimed, "what did you eat for supper?" "Bless me, I don't know. Come to think of it, I didn't have any." "Did thee have any breakfast?" asked Mr. Yocombe, who seemed greatly amused. "I believe so. I went through the motions." "Drive slow, Reuben. Richard's afraid he'll have his neck broken before dinner." And they all had a great laugh at my expense. "I've won the plume this time," cried Miss Warren. "Thee has indeed, and thee deserves it, sure enough." I looked around at her but could not catch her eyes. My efforts to emulate Mr. Yocombe's spirit were superhuman, but my success was indifferent. I was too anxious, too doubtful concerning the girl who was so gentle and yet so strong. She had far more quietude and self-mastery than I, and with good reason, for she was mistress of the situation. Still, I gathered hope every hour, for I felt that her face would not be so happy, so full of brightness, if she proposed to send me away disappointed, or even put me off on further probation. Nevertheless, my Thanksgiving Day would not truly begin until my hope was confirmed. Dinner was smoking on the table when we returned, and it was so exceedingly tempting that I enjoyed its aroma with much of Mr. Yocombe's satisfaction, and I sat down at his right, feeling that if one question were settled, I would be the most thankful man in the land. We bowed our heads in grace, but after a moment Mr. Yocombe arose and with uplifted face repeated the words that might have been written for the occasion. So wonderfully adapted to human life is the Book of God. "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases, who redeemeth thy life from destruction, who crowneth thee with loving kindness and tender mercies, who satisfieth thy mouth with good things, so that thy youth is renewed like the eagles." Never was there a grace so full of grace before. If a kind earthly father looks with joy on his happy children, so surely the Divine Father must have smiled upon us. In the depths of my heart I respected a faith that was so simple, genuine, and full of sunshine. Truly it had come from heaven, and not from the dyspeptic creeds of cloistered theologians. "Father," cried Zillah, "thee looked like my picture of King David." "Well, I'm in a royal mood," replied her father, "and I don't believe King David ever had half so good a dinner as Mother has provided." "Such a dinner, Richard, is the result of genius. All the cookbooks in the world couldn't account for it, and I don't believe Mother has read one of them." "Thee must give Cynthia part of the credit," protested his wife. "She's the woman who says 'Lord a massy' and insists that I was struck with lightning, isn't she?" And I glanced toward Miss Warren, but she wouldn't meet my eye. Her deepening color told of a busy memory, however. Mr. Yocombe began to laugh so heartily that he dropped his knife and fork on the table and leaned back in his chair, quite overcome. "Father, behave thyself," his wife remonstrated. At last the old gentleman set to work in good earnest. "Emily," he said, "this is that innocent young gobbler that thee so commiserated. Thee hasn't the heart to eat him, surely." "I'll take a piece of the breast, if you please." "Wouldn't thee like his heart?" "No, I thank you." "What part would thee like, Richard?" "Anything but his wings and legs. They would remind me how soon I must go back to awful New York." "Not before second day." "Yes, sir, tomorrow morning, and Editor's Play spells are few and far between." "Well, Richard, thee thrives on work," said Mrs. Yocombe. "Yes, I've found it good for me." "And you have done good work, Mr. Morton," added Miss Warren. "I like your paper far better now." "But you stopped it." "Did you find that out?" "Indeed I did, and very quickly." "My cousin, Mrs. Vining, took the paper." "Yes, I know that too." "Why, Mr. Morton, do you keep track of all your readers? The circulation of your paper cannot be large." "I looked after Mrs. Vining carefully, but no further." "I shall certainly tell her of your interest," she said with her old mirthful gleam. "Please do. The people at the office would be agape with wonder if they knew of the influence resulting from Mrs. Vining's name being on the subscription list." "Not a disastrous influence, I trust." "It has occasioned us some hot work. My chief says that nearly all the dragons in the country are stirred up, and some of them have been sorely wounded. I've noted that too," said the girl, flushing with pleasure in spite of herself. "Yes, please tell Mrs. Vining that also. Credit should be given where it's due." Her laugh now rang out with its old-time genuineness. "Cousin Adelaide would be more agape than the people of your office. I think the dragons owe their tribulations to your disposition to fight them. If you could see some words in illuminated text over my desk, you would know better." "Mr. Yocombe, do you think we are going to have an early winter?" she asked abruptly with a fine color in her face. "I don't think it's going to be cold. Not very cold, Emily. There are prospects of a thaw today." And the old gentleman leaned back in his chair and shook with suppressed merriment. "Father, behave thyself. Was there ever such a man?" Mrs. Yocombe exclaimed reproachfully. "I know you think there never was and never will be, Mrs. Yocombe," I cried, controlling myself with difficulty, for the old gentleman's manner was irresistibly droll, and instead of the pallor that used to make my heart ache, Miss Warren's face was like a carnation rose. My hope grew apace, for her threatening looks at Mr. Yocombe contained no trace of pain or deep annoyance, while the embarrassment she could not hide so enhanced her loveliness that it was a heavy cross to withhold my eager eyes. Reuben kindly came to our relief, for he said, "I'll tell thee what it is, mother. We feel as if we ought to have Dapple in here with us." "Emily, wouldn't thee rather have old Plod?" Mr. Yocombe asked. "No," she replied brusquely, and this set her kind tormentor off once more. But an earnest look soon came into his face, and he said with eyes moist with feeling, "Well, this is a time of Thanksgiving, and never before in all my life has my heart seemed so full of gladness and gratitude. Richard, I crept in this old home when I was a baby, and I whistled through the house just as Reuben does. In this very room my dear old father trimmed my jacket for me, God bless him. Oh, I deserved it richly, but mother's sorrowful looks cut deeper, I can tell thee. It was to this home I brought the prettiest lass in the county. What am I saying? The prettiest lass in the world. No offense to thee, Emily, thee wasn't alive then. If every man had such a home as thee has made for me and the children, mother, the millennium would begin before next Thanksgiving. In this house my children were born, and here they have played. I've seen their happy faces in every nook and corner, and with everything I have a dear association. In this home we bade good-bye to our dear little Ruth. She's ours still, mother, and she is at home too, as we are. But everything in this house that our little angel child touched has become sacred to me. Ah, Richard, there are some things in life that thee hasn't learned yet, and all the books couldn't teach thee, but what I have said to thee reveals a little of my love for this old home. How I love those whom God has given me, only He knows. Well, He directed thy random steps to us one day last June, and we welcomed thee as a stranger. But thee has a different welcome today, Richard, a very different welcome. Thee doesn't like to hear about it, but we never forget." "No, Richard, we never forget," Mrs. Yocombe breathed softly. "Do you think, sir, that I forget the unquestioning hospitality that brought me here? Can you think, Mrs. Yocombe, I ever forget the words you spoke to me in yonder parlor on the evening of my arrival, or that I should have died but for your devoted and merciful care? This day, with its hopes, teaches me how immeasurable would have been my loss, for my prospects then were not bright for either world. Rest assured, dear friends, I have my memories too. The service I rendered you any man would have given, and it was my unspeakable good fortune to be here. But the favors which I have received have been royal. They are such as I could not receive from others, because others would be incapable of bestowing them." "You are right, Mr. Morton," Miss Warren began impetuously, her lovely eyes full of tears. "I too have received kindnesses that could not come from others, because others would not know how to confer them with your gentleness and mercy, Mrs. Yocombe. Oh, oh, I wish I could make you and your husband know how I thank you. I too never forget. But if we talk in this way any more, I shall have to make a hasty retreat." "Well, I should say this was a Thanksgiving dinner," remarked Reuben sententiously. Since we couldn't cry, we all laughed, and I thanked the boy for letting us down so cleverly. The deep feeling that memories would evoke in spite of ourselves sank back into the depths of our hearts. The shadow on our faces passed like an April cloud, and the sunshine became all the sweeter and brighter. "If Ada were only here!" I cried. "I miss her more and more every moment, and the occasion seems wholly incomplete without her." "Yes, dear child, I miss her too, more than I can tell you," said Mrs. Yocombe, her eyes growing very tender and wistful. "She's thinking of us. Doesn't thee think she has improved? She used to read those magazines thee sent her till I had to take them away and send her to bed." "I can't tell you how proud I am of Ada. It was like a June day to see her fair, sweet face in the city, and it would have done your hearts good if you could have heard how she spoke of you all. Ada is very proud of her big brother too, I can tell thee. She quotes thy opinions on all occasions." "The one regret of my visit is that I shall not see her," Miss Warren said earnestly. "Mrs. Yocombe, I have those roses she gave me the day before I left you last summer, and I shall always keep them. I told Cousin Adelaide that they were given to me by the best and most beautiful girl in the world." "God bless the girl!" ejaculated Mr. Yocombe. "She has become a great comfort and joy to me." And his wife smiled softly and tenderly. "Ada is so good to me," cried Zillah, "that if Emily hadn't come I wouldn't have half enjoyed the day." "What does thee think of that view of the occasion, Richard?" asked Mr. Yocombe. "Zillah and I always agreed well together," I said, "but I wish Ada knew how much we miss her." "She shall know," said her mother. "I truly wish we had all of our children with us today. For, Richard, we have adopted thee and Emily without asking your consent. I think the lightning fused us all together." I looked with a quick flash toward Miss Warren, but her eyes were on the mother, and they were full of a daughter's love. "Dear Mrs. Yocombe," I replied in a voice not over steady, "you know that as far as fusing was concerned, I was the worst struck of you all, and this day proves that I am no longer without kindred. But how vain the effort to reproduce the light and shade that filled the quaint, simple room! How vain the attempt to make the myriad ripples of that hour flow and sparkle again, each one of us meanwhile conscious of the depths beneath them." End of Book Second, Chapter 20. Book Second, Chapter 21 of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Like Many Waters. Book Second, Chapter 21. Ripples on Deep Water. After dinner was over, Reuben cried, "Come, Zillah, I'm going out with Dapple, and I'll give thee a ride that'll settle thy dinner. Emily, thee hasn't petted Dapple today. Thee's very forgetful of one of thy best friends." "Do you know," said Miss Warren to me as we followed the boy, "Reuben sent Dapple's love to me every time he wrote?" "It's just what Dapple would have done himself if he could. Did you refuse to receive it?" "No, indeed. Why should I?" "Oh, I'm not jealous, only I can't help thinking that the horse had greater privileges than I." She bit her lip and her color deepened, but instead of answering, she tripped away from me toward the barn. Dapple came prancing out and whinnied as soon as he saw her. "Oh, he knows thee as well as I do," said Reuben. "He thinks thee's a jolly good girl. Thee's kind of cut me out, but I owe thee no grudge. See how he'll come to thee now." And sure enough, the horse came and put his nose in her hand, where he found a lump of sugar. I won't give you fine words only, Dapple, she said, and the beautiful animal's spirited eyes grew mild and gentle as if he understood her perfectly. Heaven grant that she gives me more than words, I muttered. While Reuben was harnessing Dapple, Miss Warren entered the barn, saying, I feel a little remorseful over my treatment of old Plod, and I think I will go and speak to him. May I be present at the interview? Certainly. Either the old horse had grown duller and heavier than ever, or else was offended by her long neglect, for he paid her but little attention and kept his head down in his manger. Dapple would not treat you like that, even if you hadn't a lump of sugar in your hand. Dapple is peculiar, she remarked. Do you mean a little ill-balanced? He was certainly very precipitate on one occasion. Yes, but he had the grace to stop before he did any harm. But suppose he couldn't stop? Did old Plod give you any more advice? Mr. Morton, you must curb your editorial habit of inquiring into everything. Am I a dragon? I fear you more than all the dragons put together. Then you are a brave man to stay. Not at all. To run away would be worse than death. What an awful dilemma you are in. It seems to me, however, the coolest veteran in the land could not have made a better dinner while in such peril. I had scarcely eaten anything since yesterday morning. Moreover, I was loyally bound to compliment Mrs. Yoakum's efforts in the only way that would satisfy her. That reminds me that I ought to go and help Mrs. Yoakum clear away the vast debris of such a dinner. Miss Warren, I have only this afternoon and evening. Truly, Mr. Morton, the pathos in your tones would move a post. But will it move you? That's the question that concerns me. Will you take a walk with me? Indeed, I think I must go now, if I would not be thought more insensible than a post. Wait till I put on more wraps, and do you get your overcoat, sir, or you will take cold. Yes, I'm awfully afraid I shall be chilled, and the overcoat wouldn't help me. Nevertheless, I'll do your bidding in this and in all respects. What a lamb-like frame of mind, she cried, but her step up the piazza was light and quick. She could not so play with me if she meant to be cruel, for she has not a feline trait, I murmured as I pulled on my ulster. This genial day has been my ally, and she has not the heart to embitter it. So far from finding other interests, she must have seen that time has intensified the one chief interest of my life. Oh, it would be like death to be sent away again. How beautiful she has become in her renewed health. Her great spiritual eyes make me more conscious of the woman angel within her than of a flesh and blood girl. Human she is indeed, but never of the earth, earthy. Even when I take her hand, now again so plump and pretty, I feel the exquisite thrill of her life within. It's like touching a spirit, were such a thing possible. I crushed her hand this morning, brute that I was. It's been red all day. Well, heaven speed me now. What? Talking to yourself again, Mr. Morton? Asked Miss Warren, suddenly appearing, and looking anything but spirit-like, with her rich color and substantial wraps. It's a habit of lonely people, I said. The idea of a man being lonely among such crowds as you must meet. I have yet to learn that a crowd makes company. Wouldn't you like to ask Mr. Yoakum to go with us? No, I replied very brusquely. I fear your lamb-like mood is passing away. Not at all. Moreover, I'm a victim of remorse. I hurt your hand this morning. Yes, you did. I've hurt you a great many times. I'm alive, thank you, and have had a good dinner. Yes, you are very much alive. Are you very amiable after dinner? No, that's a trait belonging to men alone. I now understand your lamb-like mood. But where are you going, Mr. Morton? You are walking at random and have brought up against the barn. Oh, I see. Wouldn't you like to visit old Plod again? No, I thank you. He has forgotten me. By the way, we are friends, are we not, and can be very confidential? If you have any doubt, you had better be prudent and reticent. I wish I could find some sweetbriar. I'd give you the whole bush. Do you think I deserve a thorny experience? You know what I think. When was there an hour when you did not look through me as if I were glass? But we are confidential friends, are we not? Well, for the sake of argument, we may imagine ourselves such. To be logical, then, I must tell of you something of which I have not yet spoken to anyone. I called on Ada the evening I learned she was in town, and I saw her enter an elegant coupe driven by a coachman in stunning livery. A millionaire of your acquaintance accompanied her. "What?" she exclaimed, her face becoming fairly radiant. I nodded very significantly. "For shame, Mr. Morton! What a gossip you are!" But her laugh rang out like a chime of silver bells. At that moment Mr. Yocombe appeared on the piazza, and he applauded loudly. "Good for thee, Emily!" he cried. "That sounds like old times." "Come away, quick!" I said, and I strode rapidly around the barn. "Do you expect me to keep up with you?" she asked, stopping short and looking so piquant and tempting that I rejoined her instantly. "I'll go as slow as you please. I'll do anything under heaven you bid me." "You treated Mr. Yocombe very shabbily." "You won't make me go after him, will you?" "Why, Mr. Morton, what base ingratitude! And after such a dinner, too!" "You know how ill-balanced I am." "I fear you are growing worse and worse." "I am indeed. Left to myself, I should be the most unbalanced man in the world." "Mr. Morton, your mind is clearly unsettled. I detected the truth the first day I saw you." "No, my mind, such as it is made up irrevocably and forever. I must tell you that I can't afford to keep a coupe." "There is a beautiful sequence in your remarks. Then you ought not to keep one. But why complain? There are always omnibuses within call." "Are you fond of riding in an omnibus?" "What an irrelevant question! Suppose I followed your example and asked what you think of the Copernican system." "You can't be ill-balanced if you try, and your question is not in the least irrelevant. The Copernican system is true and illustrates my position exactly. There is a heavenly body, radiant with light and beauty, that attracts me irresistibly. The moment I came within her influence, my orbit was fixed." "Isn't your orbit a little eccentric?" she asked, with averted face. "Still, your figure may be very apt. Another body of greater attraction would carry you off into space." "There is no such body in existence." "Mr. Morton, we were talking about omnibuses." "And you have not answered my question." "Since we are such confidential friends, I will tell you a profound secret. I prefer streetcars to omnibuses, and would much rather ride in one than in a carriage that I could not pay for." "Well, now, that's sensible." "Yes, quite matter of fact. Where are you going, Mr. Morton?" "Wherever you wish, even to Columbus." "What? Run away from your work and duty? Where is your conscience?" "Where my heart is." "Oh, both are in Columbus. I should think it inconvenient to have them so far off." I tried to look in her eyes, but she turned them away. "I can prove that my conscience was in Columbus. I consulted you on every question I discussed in the paper." "Nonsense! You never wrote me a line." "I was enjoined not to, in a way that made my blood run cold. But I thought Mrs. Vining's opinions might be influenced by a member of her family, and I never wrote a line unmindful of that influence." Again her laugh rang out. "I should call the place where you wrote the Circumlocution Office. Well, to keep up your way of doing things, that member of the family read most critically all you wrote." "How could you tell my work from that of others?" "Oh, I could tell every line from your hand as if spoken to me." "Well, fair critic?" "Never compliment a critic. It makes them more severe." "I could do so much better if you were in New York." "What, do you expect me to go into the newspaper business?" "You are in it now. You are guiding me. You are the inspiration of my best work, and you know it." We had now reached a point where the lane wound through a hemlock grove. My hope was glad and strong, but I resolved at once to remove all shadow of fear, and I shrank from further probation. Therefore I stopped decisively and said in a voice that faltered not a little, "Emily, our light words are but ripples that cover depths which in my case reach down through life and beyond it. You are my fate. I knew it the first day I met you. I know it now with absolute conviction." She turned a little away from me and trembled. "Do you remember this?" I asked, and I took from my pocketbook the withered York and Lancaster rosebud. She gave it a dark glance, and her crimson face grew pale. "Too well," she replied in a low tone. I threw it down and ground it under my heel. Then, removing my hat, I said, "I am at your mercy. You are the stronger, and your foot is on my neck." She turned on me instantly, and her face was aflame with her eager, imperious demand to know the truth. Taking both my hands in a tense, strong grasp, she looked into my eyes as if she would read my very soul. "Richard," she said in a voice that was half entreaty, half command, "in God's name, tell me the truth, the whole truth. Do you respect me at heart? Do you trust me? Can you trust me as Mr. Yocombe trusts his wife?" "I will make no comparisons," I replied gently. "Like the widow in the Bible, I give you all I have." Her tense grasp relaxed. Her searching eyes melted into love itself, and I snatched her to my heart. "What were the millions I lost compared with this dowry?" she murmured. "I knew it. I've known it all day, ever since you crushed my hand. Oh, Richard, your rude touch healed a sore heart." "Emily," I said with a low laugh, "that June day was the day of fate after all." "It was indeed. I wish I could make you know how gladly I accept mine. Oh, Richard, I nearly killed myself trying not to love you. It was fate, or something better." "Then suppose we change the figure and say our match was made in heaven." I will not attempt to describe that evening at the farmhouse. We were made to feel that it was our own dear home, a safe, quiet haven, ever open to us when we wished to escape from the turmoil of the world. I thank God for our friends there and their unchanging truth. I accompanied Emily to Columbus, but I went after her again in the spring, and for a time she made her home with Mrs. Yocombe. Ada was married at Mrs. Winfield's large city mansion, for Mr. Hearn had a host of relatives and friends whom he wished present. The farmhouse would not have held a tithe of them, and the banker was so proud of his fair country flower that he seemed to want the whole world to see her. We were married on the anniversary of the day of our fate, and in the old garden where I first met my Eve, my truth. She has never tempted me to aught save good deeds and brave work. The End. End of Book 2nd, Chapter 21. End of A Day of Fate by Edward P. Rowe.